Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the 129th edition of the iRacing Today radio show for January the 29th. It's the 29th theme here on our show, and we are glad that you could join us. My name is Trevor Cameron. No, it's not. It's Chad Dalton. We are doing the Invert the Field segment, I guess, on our show this week. So I'm Trevor, and that guy over there is Chad. How are you doing tonight, Trevor?
I'm in Jamaica. I don't know. What am I supposed to do?
You're supposed to laugh.
Oh, okay. Hi, Chad. How are you doing today? Wait, am I Trevor?
Yes, you are.
I'm Kevin.
Kevin. Who's Kevin? Is this a new guy? Man,
Well, you know.
I can't keep up with the new people.
He doesn't actually have a voice or anything. It's just that some people, I introduce myself as Trevor all the time, and I say, "Hi, nice to meet you. My name's Trevor," and they say, "Hi, Kevin." I don't know why.
Okay.
Happens all the time.
Well, anyways, we have a jam-packed show. Something you've never heard us say before, I know, but we do have a lot to cover because there is quite a bit of news. And then we're going to talk about something that is becoming more of a bigger deal here in the recent week or two that is involving the freezingness of your iRacing. We'll explain that a little later. We also are going to, I don't know, there was some race that happened last weekend that we might talk about. You know, it was kind of a big deal. So we might squeeze that in if we have time. I mean, it just depends. So we'll see how that goes. But anyways, it's a very, very jam-packed show that we have for you, and we are very excited to bring you the 129th show. So Trevor, why don't we kick it off?
We'll kick it off with the fact that iRacing apparently is still doing some patchwork. I can almost, if you smell really closely, you can smell the spackle and the filling that they're putting in around the website because they have released again some more website stability fixes. That's about all they said. If you actually look at what they said, "Hey, we're taking the site down." This was yesterday. To implement some more or some further website stability stuff. So apparently they are still working in the background to try to make the website a little bit less crashy and things. So I don't know if I haven't actually been on other than right now since I've done it. Although for me, since they did the last batch of stability stuff, the website itself seems to be pretty stable, except when hundreds of teams are attempting to log in at once. But you know. But for the most part, everything seems to be quite stable for me, but they've made some further patches, so we'll see if things are getting better. I mean, they're going to be... I'm hoping they're done fixing this build before we get to the next build.
That'd be nice.
I mean, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but, you know, it would be nice if everything was fixed up before we start throwing new stuff on. It's like... I can just see it now, like there's some engineers there, you know, just sitting there down on their hands and knees, fixing up the little bits and pieces, and there's the other group of engineers that makes new stuff with the wheelbarrow. They're just about to dump it on, and they're all like, no more stuff, we're not ready. But anyway, so, and you just got really pixelated on the video stream, so that's exciting. But you're back now.
I froze on my screen, so apparently I've got a little bit of the iRacing freeze screen going on.
Oh no, every 5 to 8 seconds.
It's a nice segue, huh? So, there is a problem, among others, that had been going on with iRacing. Now, most of our problems since this past build have been to do with the website, as everybody knows. And I'm sure that there have been different bugs with the sim, and there pretty much always are. Different people have different bugs at various times. However, a bug that had launched, which is funny to say, but it launched when the new build launched and has only apparently gotten worse and became a big deal, apparently, during the 24 hours of Daytona for several people, is dubbed the iRacing screen freeze bug, I guess.
I guess if you were to give it a name, but
yeah, you know, if you're into naming things. And basically, what happens is you'll be driving along and having a good old time, smiling ear to ear, cruising along, what, 200, 300, depending on the car. Well, maybe not 300 miles an hour, but, you're just having a good time. And then all of a sudden, the screen will freeze. But everything else works, as it probably should. And that no good for racing.
Yeah, and we actually had several listeners to the show contact us through Twitter and basically saying, hey, have you guys, been hearing a lot about this? And once that floodgate opened, several people kind of commented and mentioning, like we were saying, specifically certain, long races you've done a lot of preparation for, and all of a sudden it caused some problems. So apparently it actually did kill a bunch of people's 24-hour race because, like Chad's saying, if all of a sudden, everything stops responding for about 2 seconds, 2 seconds is a long time. If it catches you right, I don't know, entering turn 1 might be a really bad place for 2 seconds to pass by without you having any input into your vehicle. Or perhaps, out on the, the backstretch. I mean, sure, you just blow the bus stop, but, see, that wouldn't be so bad. But depends on if it's right after there. There's a wall over there, too, so... but yeah, in the forums, there have been several people mentioning stuff. In particular, there's a 25-page or 25-page thread about people talking about stuff and what they've tried. I've just skimmed through there. Obviously, I haven't read the whole thing, but a lot of people mentioning what they've tried. Some people actually being helpful, and actually just yesterday, Alex Gustafson, who's an iRacing staff member, posted in there that they have posted a sticky thread, titled Frame Rate Issues with iRacing. This was just posted up yesterday by Alex, and he has several suggestions in there. I don't know if anybody's having any luck with these yet. Just went up yesterday, but there is a ton of new things to try. However, the core of it is the fact that it did work, now it doesn't, so now people are having to tweak to try to get it to work, and that's never a good cycle to get into with a piece of software where, hey, everything was fine, I meet your I far exceed your requirements, or your recommended settings, yet it's still having a problem. And the number of games that I've had that have done that to me, trust me, been there, done that, and the onus shouldn't be on the user to make the stuff run properly, especially if it was running properly. So, good that they're actually giving some suggestions and stuff, but at the core of it, something's broke, because, it wasn't doing it before. But we will put the thread in there. It is stickied under the Technical Assistance iRacing Software Related thread, or section in the forums there, so you can find it pretty easy, but I'll put a link in the show notes anyway, and you guys can go take a look if you're having the problem, because, until they fix everything and you want to race, well, you got to take, maybe take some steps yourself to try to help fix the problem until everything is fixed on its own. But it's we've got a lot of tweets into the show through feedback stuff and through Twitter, mentioning, a lot of you guys are having this problem, so it seems pretty far spread, which is really unfortunate, especially considering all the other stuff we've been going through with this build. We've had a bunch of other issues, and now to find out that apparently since December is when people started reporting this, the service has become basically unplayable for some people. I mean, if you every 8 seconds, you're losing control for 2 seconds, well, you can't race. I mean, that's just, if it was a first-person shooter, for example, your, kill-death ratio would suffer significantly and the game wouldn't be fun, but you could still tough it out. If it was something else, you could get around it kind of thing, but something like a racing sim, you're just done. You just, shouldn't be on the track because you're going to ruin a bunch of other people's races, and you're not going to have a good race anyway, so why bother? So it's rather unfortunate that they're having yet another major problem with this build.
Yeah, and I don't want to go into this necessarily, but it bothers me in a way that, but at the same time, it's kind of sad, I guess, that this build for some reason has been very, very buggy
Mm.
compared to ones we've had in the past. Now we've had bugs before, trust me. This is not the first rodeo of bugs, but it just seems like there have been a whole lot more compiled into one, setting after a build, and it's kind of sad because I think back, to some of the people that joined for the first time, because of the Nurburgring, and it's like, hey, I want to go drive that track, but you can't. So sorry.
Yeah, actually, there was one person that just caught my eye in the threads, a new member, or at least joined, well, mid last year. Uh, they said, "This is my first experience of a new build in iRacing. Is it normal to have to wait till the next build for any fixes to be implemented?" So, it's making an impression on some newer
Yeah.
members. And that's going to happen. I mean, people are coming in and out of the service all the time. So if they come in at this time, this is not a great time. We don't have our best face forward at this point in time. Let's just say that.
Well, and like you were saying, you hope you get it all fixed before the next build. The next build is in March. I mean, we're probably a month and a couple weeks at most, maybe,
Yep.
from that next build. So, and we're still having issues. So it's. I mean, I guess I don't know. I kind of hope that the March build addresses a lot of this.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to find them back off a little bit. I mean, obviously, we have some new content coming in, which we'll talk about a little bit in a few minutes here. But I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if I was running the company, I would say, you know what? Let's back off on any new features we're going to bring into the sim on this build. Let's bite the bullet and just have a build where we're not going to put a bunch of new features in and just continue the maintenance, add in the new content because that's kind of separate from the issues unless it's something like Nürburgring, which is, something like the company's never done before. But, the cars and whatnot, bring in the new content, just dial it back and just, what, as an iRacing member, as a person who uses the service, I'd be willing to, to suffer it out and say, you know what, if there's new features you're going to give me this time, I'm okay with waiting another 3 months. That's cool. Another 3 months in order to get that stuff. I'm fine with that. And I think most rational people would be the same way. I'd rather they get their house in order before they start piling new stuff on top of the crumbling foundation, I guess. Seems a
Yeah.
bit defeatist to say it that way, but it's kind of where we're at right now, so.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point in, pushing out new features if nobody can use them because the site doesn't stay up or the sim freezes every so many seconds or whatever.
Yep.
So, I agree. I would try to fix as much as possible and then worry about all the cool stuff.
Yep. And I'm totally cool with that. So, anyway, hopefully not many of you are suffering this. We know just from you guys, giving us feedback that our listeners, some of our listeners are being affected and as a whole, the community is being affected. But hopefully, either A, everything gets fixed up pretty soon, B, some of the suggestions that Alex made in his post will help, and C, well, hopefully he's not having to do it at all. So, and some of the people who are mentioning it, I noticed in the forum post, like it's not a system thing. People are running some beefy systems and still having the problem. People running like the 970, like I'm running right now. I know from my experience, fortunately, I don't seem to be having any issues. But that thing, the 970 runs iRacing like a beast. I mean, it's more than capable of handling the sim. Although during the 24, I did have a couple little micro stutters, but it wasn't this. It was just there's a lot happening and there's a lot of data going back and forth, and it wasn't a freeze. It was just kind of a slight dip in frame rate every now and again when I went into some of the turns. But I was also streaming and had the chat up and had all these overlays and stuff. So I was probably just doing that to myself. So I think at one point in time, OBS was over there blinking its face off, going, "Hey, you're doing a lot of things. Are you sure you want to keep doing what you're doing?" You know, and I'm in the car. It's like, what's happening is happening, man. I don't got time to click buttons over there, so deal with it. but anyway, so that is unfortunate. We'll put those links in the show notes so you guys can check that out. And like I said, if you are suffering, then I'll put that link also to Talix, I suppose, to give you some suggestions on things that might help out with that.
Yes. So, assuming that everybody can participate, a bit of good news now. The Daytona fever continues. Because obviously we just did the 24 hours of Daytona, in case you didn't know. And now, just around the calendar here, the iRacing Daytona 500, which of course is a NASCAR iRacing series race, the first week of that series. It will kick off February the 18th through the 22nd. And in case you didn't catch it on a couple of shows ago when we announced it, that is a full race-length Daytona 500. So you're not running the Daytona 100, you're running the Daytona 500. So settle up for 200 laps, 500 miles, NASCAR style, on the big old oval. Skip the road course this time. And try not to have, can you imagine your screen's freezing in a big old pack?
Yeah, that would be bad. That would end a lot of things real quickly, and there would be a lot of yelling and cursing, I think.
There would be. So anyways, let us know if you're going to participate in that. I am on the fence about actually doing it just for the fun of it, because the last time I participated in that race, which obviously it's a little different now because it's part of the iRacing series, the NASCAR Racing Series, it used to just be a World Tour event. But the last time that I did it was the first year that I ever joined the Sim, 2010. And I was doing quite well, actually, until I got in a wreck about halfway through. And I don't even know where I finished. And I don't know, I've kind of halfway want to do it again. But I'm a little leery about my internet connection. I don't know how the blinking would work out too well.
True enough.
If I was to blink. So I don't know. We'll think about it. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe I'll get my actual internet before then. I have no word yet, but we'll see. So, anyways, February 18th to 22nd for that race. Now, we've also made some more updates, tweaks to our iRacing Today radio show website. And I've finally gotten those About Us pages done. How do you like your picture, Trevor?
I forgot to check before we went live, and now it's the live page, so I can't actually see it.
So now we're going to get a live reaction.
Well, I
look
can't
forward to this.
Yeah, well, I can't actually go look at it because remember, you have our page all focused on the live show, so
That's very true.
So you can't check it right now, man.
Well, anyways, after the show, when Trevor sees it, so we won't get the live reaction. I forgot. But we do have our live page on our website. In case you don't know, you can watch our shows live and listen live and chat live right from our website whenever we are live. I'm just trying to stay live as much as possible.
Well, and you know, the whole live thing, I mean, I think we took it to new levels during the 24 race, and now you got the let's make everything bigger, better, liver bug going on, because as soon as we finished out of that and you realize what we could do with that, you know, with the streaming of the race, you're like, man, for the show, well, I could do this and I could do that and I could do this. So he's been just busy coming up with ideas for, you know, days here. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this now. And then, okay, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to do this now. So, you know what? The page is becoming a much more useful tool in our repertoire, I think, thanks to Mr. Chad's efforts here.
Yeah, so anyways, we'll I might continue to tweak it. I don't know. We'll see. But just trying to give you guys a one-stop shop. That, for the record, and we're going to get to this later, but having the 3 screens was pretty cool, wasn't it, of our races last week?
Yeah, I mean, we got some great comments from people who are really enjoying watching the show or watching the shows like that, and I use it myself. Like I just had my laptop upstairs when I wasn't in the car and downstairs in the broadcast booth, and I was just scrolling up and down, just checking them all. I couldn't have all the audio on because that was just too much. So I just have like one audio on and then just watch the other 2 scrolling up and down. So it was that was a That was a really cool idea, and we got some great feedback. A lot of people really enjoyed it, and a lot of people, that's how, like even our teammates, like I said, when they weren't in the car, that's how they're keeping up on the teams, and checking and, getting onto TeamSpeak and just letting the other guys know, because I know what happened, whenever I was in the car or listening to TeamSpeak, people were asking, how's the other teams doing? How's the other teams doing? And we were using that as a tool to keep everybody updated, so.
Yeah. So anyways, our plan, by the way, is to continue to do that sort of thing as we move forward in all these endurance events. So the next one is 12 Hours of Sebring. Have no idea how many streams we'll have, but we'll try to put them all there.
I don't know. Based on we're getting some good feedback on people who are prepared to do that race. So
yes,
it could just turn into that scene from the end of The Matrix. I think it's what our webpage is going to look like.
Probably. So, hopefully everyone enjoys that in the future. Now, something else that I will mention is a listener of our show, a teammate, friend, and I was trying to think of something else to call him, but I ran out of things.
I was going to go with occasional Twitter instigator, I guess would be a good term.
It's a good one. And no, we are not talking about Larry. We are talking about, not Larry, Andy. I get him confused. Sorry. We are talking about Scott Feltenhausen, who has, in the past, run leagues before and is wanting to start up another, well, he's kind of already started it up, but he wants to run another league using iRacing. And he's already created all of the basic stuff that you would need for the league. Under the league directory, if you go to the iRacing members website and search it out, you can search out iRacing Today Radio Show Sim Racing League. There you go. But he's wanting to get this started. I'm not sure yet exactly if he's decided on cars or what he wants to do. Last I heard, I was thinking we were going to do something like oval and road, but I don't know.
That was I think that was the original vision, was the oval and the roads, to kind of give everybody a slice of everything kind of thing.
Yeah, so if you are interested, I don't know if the league is doing the recruiting, and I don't know if oh, yes it is. It says right there. Recruiting, yes. Handy, that one right there. So you can join the league. I already gave you the name. That being said, he is wanting to do a full distance Talladega race in about 2 weeks time to be the exact. Now, I'm not going to do all of this for time zone stuff, excuse me, but he wants to do it at 9 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday the 13th of February. So figure out what time zone that is for you. That would be 1400 GMT, I believe. And he is going to do a full race. So that's 188 laps, 500 miles. And then I think he's going to try to do a short season after that. Not sure yet what. To kind of get the feet wet, so to speak. So if you're interested, iRacing Today Radio Show Sim Racing League. And I'll get Trevor to put a link in the show notes.
Yep. That
goes directly to it. So, anyways, come race if you have any desire. By the way, any use of profanity is not tolerated. That says right there, plain as day, in the rulebook. Just letting you know that. So, Trevor, keep the sailor mouth to the south.
Well,
I just made that up.
I've become a proficient non-swear in situations where I should not be swearing. It's not just the podcasting thing. It's being a parent, you see, has taught me that skill. Podcasting, helps as well. I don't think I've ever actually let it slip on all of the. I've been on, between all the podcasts I've been on, the ones I started and the ones I did with other people. I don't think I've ever let it slip, which is pretty impressive considering all the hours I've done. So. That's not too bad. Occasionally, it happens in the right company because I was a sailor and I do like to express myself in a excited fashion occasionally. There are times that I'm streaming I'm playing games that I'm lucky I'm not streaming them because sometimes. But anyway, so we will have the information to check that out in the show notes, of course. Now, we talked about stuff coming out in the new build and what may or may not be coming. We don't know what new features are happening, but what we do know is that the Audi R8 LMS GT3 car is slated to be released with iRacing's next build, which, again, as we mentioned earlier, is in March. It's like basically February now, so they have put out a Twitter link with a pretty picture, or well, a pretty video of the Audi, and it is a fine-looking car. Let's say that's the actual car
that we're getting.
Yeah, yeah, that is not a render, because I looked at it for a second. It's like, okay, no, that's not a render because that looks too good. Oh, and there's some sound from it that just popped into the video portion because the video played when I went over to the link. So there you go, copyright infringement. And some person actually posted in there saying, is the Merc still on track for March 2? To which iRacing replied, yep. So, just in case anybody was saying, well, if we're getting this... So, and I mean, and if iRacing says, yep, well, that's got to be true. I mean, waste no letters. Yup.
Yep.
So anyway, I will put a link to that tweet in the show notes, so you too can be interrupted by a video playing music in the middle of your podcast, and you can Google over the Audi car, which looks pretty dang cool, actually. Looks cooler than the Ford GT3, I'll tell you that much. That was actually the Daytona race that we did was I believe my first real experience with seeing that car on track, and there wasn't that many in our split that we did. And I remember I passed one once. I can't remember who was in the chat with me on the TeamSpeak and stuff, but I came up on it and I looked at it, it's like, what is that thing? Because I hadn't seen any, because I was used to seeing the McLarens and the BMWs, and I'm looking and it's like, and it looks sort of like the Corvette, but like somebody took the Corvette and just squished it. They put it in one of those car trash compactors, start it, and then decided not to. I don't know. That's a weird looking car. I'm sure it's a very nice car. I don't mean to insult the car, but it looked weird to me. But anyway, the Audi, that's a pretty looking car. Just saying, it is, and we'll be getting it in March, ladies and gentlemen, which is not that far away. Speaking of things that have launched, hey, Trading Paints. You may have heard of it. We may have talked about it before. Okay, we have a bunch. But they have launched a new website. I wonder if that is part of their whole, hey, we lost everything, so since we're starting from scratch anyway, let's rebuild this thing from the ground up. Or if that was part of the plan in the initial goings off. But they have launched a new website, which I find a little bit more intuitive, a little bit easier to get around. Some of the stuff when they're showing the cars off, the paints and stuff looks a little prettier. But if you haven't been to the Trading Paints site, because a lot of you don't, you go there, you sign up, you launch the app, and that's about the last you see of it. But if you head on over there, everything looks a little bit different with a new coat of paint on there. So if you want to check that out, of course, head over to tradingpaints.com or right-click on the icon that is no doubt running in your taskbar right now and say, go to website or launch website or whatever it says. The thing that says go to website. I don't know. It says launch Trading Paints website. See, look, live feedback right there. Just to prove that I actually have it running right now. Because I do.
There you go. My only beef with it is that when you are looking at your list of cars to see whether you've got a paint scheme uploaded or not, you have to click on each of them. Whereas on the previous site, they were just all there.
You're right.
And you could see them. I'm not too thrilled by that. Other than that, it looks pretty cool.
You're right. Yeah, because it actually had just a little tiny thumbnail there, so you didn't know which ones you had paints for or not. But the Aston Martin,
it was easy to click on it, and then you could see the full size paint.
Although as soon as
exactly what you have.
As soon as you click on it, you know that you don't have it because it just pops up this huge gray box that says no paint selected. It's like, I'm sorry, I meant to put one in there. I'll do better.
Oh man, that was so great. But if you you do have a paint scheme uploaded, which I'm looking at the one I have right now for the cup car, it's pretty big. It's definitely easy to see it. So you can tell which one you have. So I do like that. I just wish that you could I wish there was a little bitty thumbnail next to all the names and then you could click on it and make it big.
Or at least maybe a check mark. So Steve,
Yeah.
we know you listen. So just
Yes.
a little check mark, a little X, just a little icon that indicates whether or not you have paints
Something
for
to
it.
let you know. A checkered flag. Let's go with checkered flag.
I like it. Or
I like it.
the iRacing Today radio show logo. Just
There
a little
you go.
logo. Chad will provide it
Little
for you.
advertising. Little advertising.
Because we know you love us, Steve. So, you know what, just help us out, man. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. But yes, do love the new trading paints. Even the new logo for trading paints. It almost it reminds me of what is it that it reminds me of? It's a logo that looks similar. It's no longer just TP in black and white. It's like a blue and a red thing.
Yeah. Like
It looks
like two
familiar.
like two seagulls attached to the butt. I don't know. Actually, it looks
Wow.
like one of those sites that you go to if you're a day trader, like etrade.com or something. And
Look in the chat. Look in the chat. What Danny just said. I like it. Better
Chad's
than the
face
checkered
with a
flag.
thumb up. It's like, do I have a paint here? I don't know. Let's check with Chad. Chad says yes.
And if you don't,
So even we'll go one step further. It'll be Chad's face if you have one, and it'll be Trevor's face if you don't. Because Chad makes paints and Trevor doesn't. He just says, "Hey,
It's
anybody,
true.
could you paint me a car?" So it's intuitive.
there you go. Let's get on it, Steve. I'll put in a call to Steve tonight. Uh, okay, new thing. So I used to have a blog called The White Flag. Some of you read it. Some of you didn't care. That's cool with me. I have now started a new blog and have erased the white flag.
Boo.
Moment of silence.
Well,
Anyways,
the checkered flag has flown over the white flag.
yes, exactly. So I launched a new blog. I'm only going to post probably once a month or maybe twice a month if there happens to be a ton of racing going on, like some of these endurance stuff going on. But it's probably just going to be a once a month thing or a when I feel like it kind of deal.
Ah, I was right.
You were
E-Trade.
right?
E-Trade.
E-Trade. See?
Yeah,
I
if
knew
you
it was
actually get
somewhere.
like E-Trade, their logo, it's not the same, mind you, but that's exactly what you were thinking.
See, I knew it was from somewhere. Anyways, back to the story. So I'll only post when I feel like it or if there's a lot of racing going on. Anyways, the new blog is called 77 Strong, the blog. Let that
77
sink in a little
strong.
bit.
Okay, let that sink
Yeah.
in. Is it done sinking
Uh,
yet?
Yes, it's done sinking. So, anyways, the only reason why I changed the name is because I kind of like the white flag, but it didn't really fit me personally, whereas this I think fits me a little better. So the direct link is simracer.com/77strong. I've only made one post, and it was about our 24-hour race from the past weekend. So head on over there and checks it out. The
What's
app.ini file.
Wait, actually, I was just
Say.
going to say. So what? So you got
No,
to.
you're not allowed to say anything.
Oh, but just
Okay,
because I
go
let
ahead.
you start the show doesn't mean that I've been cut out of the loop here. I'm still allowed to have opinions.
I don't know. That's up for debate.
So why? So what's different between this blog and the other one you were doing then? Like, what's the onus
Pretty-
for changing it around?
Pretty much nothing, except for the name. And the style in which I write it will be slightly different. Is I'm gonna try to keep them a little more shorter, except for when there is an endurance race, in which case they'll be probably a little bit longer, because 24 hours is a lot to write about.
It is a lot.
Just so you know. But I probably the main difference is really, and the reason why I changed it is because it just fits me a little better. That's really the whole reason. I'm not really going to change how I write or what I write about. I won't be writing just about random races, I guess. I'll write specifically about, like, if I was to do the Daytona 500 next month, then I would probably write about that, and whatever happened. But I'm not going to write, about the Power Series race at Milwaukee Mile this weekend, for example.
You guys are at
So,
the Milwaukee Mile?
yes,
That in the
they
cup
are.
car, in the cup car.
Yes,
That sounds
they are.
horrible.
I am actually looking forward to it. Um, but that was a side note. Anyways, the app.9 I found now. Can I continue on
Yes,
with
sir.
this? Okay, so we missed this last week because we had a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about this week, but we're doing the show earlier, so we don't care. Um, let's see. So we've talked about a few things here in the app file that is probably not very important to most of you, and to some of you, maybe it was. Um, there is some cam tool, as they call it, which is really the camera tool settings that they've kind of hidden in here. There are a ton of camera tool settings. For the record, iRacing has been very gracious, maybe, in giving us, I don't know if that's the right word, but they've given us a lot of options and a lot of controllingness with the cameras, which is really handy for those of you who might want to get into streaming, not streaming, but doing broadcast stuff. If you ever get into a broadcast, like if you do it for your league, you don't have to necessarily become a professional broadcasting setup. But if you just want to broadcast league races or something and kind of help save the money, so to speak, for your league, but get the word out there, there's a ton of stuff you can do with cameras. It also would be really cool if you made highlight videos. If you made recap videos or something, you could do it. So there's a lot of cam tool stuff in iRacing itself in the options. You're going to say something, so I'm just
I
going to let you
was
not hold your breath anymore.
I was just going to say, and it's also some of the flexibility with camera stuff is really helpful if, for example, you're streaming a race for 24 hours and you're only actually going to be
Yes.
at your computer for 6 of those hours, and you don't want it to just be the same static shot the entire for that entire time, because that's not
Yes.
entertaining. So you were able to download what people have done and manipulate it with the different cameras, so you actually get a random camera going. So it's shows a more dynamic and interesting view for the streamers.
Are you announcing our show as we go? No pay selected. Cam tool.
You
In the
just
chat
seemed
room.
you seemed very excited about Cam Tool, and no paint
I just
selected
think it's
just
funny.
popped out. So
Cam tool. I mean, that's what it's called in the app file. Dead serious. I just think it's funny. So, anyways, they have a few things in the app file for the cam tool. They have the auto shot selection, which is where you can automatically switch cameras based on shot quality, which is where iRacing will automatically find something that looks good. Most of the time, a couple times it may be a little weird, but for the most part, it's going to find something that looks good. Or you can turn that off and just manually do it yourself, I guess, if you are into that sort of thing. There are several other things down through the cam tool section in the app file that I'm not going to sit here and read all of them, because some of them don't even make any sense to me because I've never really messed with them. But directly below this cam tool section is the drive screen section, which is where you have things like your black box, pit box, which is where you switch pit box, black box to display. That's a lot of different words in one sentence. There's also where the reset can exit the car setting is. So does pressing reset, meaning hitting your reset button that you have set up. So like for me, it is the square on my Driving Force GT. That can exit the car, because by default, I think it is set up that way. But what you really use that button for is actually like if you've been in a wreck and you can't drive your car, so you tow it back. But it can also exit the car if you push it down again. In case you didn't know that, you can turn that off. So if you only want to use it as a tow button and not accidentally kick yourself out of your own car, then you probably want to turn that to 0, which is off. For the reset can exit car. And by the way, you would have to be in your pit stall for that to happen anyways, just so you know. Let's see. show radio controls, show speed gear controls, system meters, video timer, and the, well, UI offset bottom percentage. Whew.
Yeah,
All of that is
that thing.
listed in here. Yeah. So I'll explain what that is here in just a second. But so like the radio controls, the gear button controls, excuse me, and your system meters box. What are those? So those, when you're in iRacing, the radio controls is where it shows a little black box what radio that you are actually listening to or transmitting to. So like team or drivers or all teams or one of those,
Right.
and it'll show it. But you can actually turn that off to where it won't show it all the time, and it will only display it when you actually change channels. So that's where you can do that. The speed gear controls, which is obviously where your speed shows up, shows your controls, your input devices with your pedals and steering wheel. You can show that. You can turn that off there. And then your system meters is actually the FPS little tiny black box where it shows your frames per second and your internet connection. You can also toggle that on and off if you would like. In the app file setting, all those would be set to 0 to be off, 1 to be on. The show video timer. Now this is something that it displays a clock on the screen that can be used to synchronize live video with a replay.
Huh.
This is something that I think came in either in the last build or the build before. I don't remember. But it's kind of interesting. Now, I don't use it because I don't know what I would use it for, to be honest. But it's kind of interesting that they give you this tool. And I know that there are probably some people that use it, where you can synchronize the live video with your replay, which is pretty cool.
I'm gonna have to check that out with some of my stuff that I'm doing with the race streaming and whatnot. See if that's helpful.
Yeah. And then the UI offset bottom percentage that I mentioned, I have mine set to 0, by the way. But it is the shift the bottom of the UI, the user interface, up by a specified percentage. So you can move it up or down. I have 0, which is the default, I believe. So that is that. And I guess, for now, that will be all that we tackle in this week's edition of the app file.
Excellent. So, just if you guys want to give us some feedback and let us know, if these are helpful, because I don't think there's any one real good resource that just says, here's what all the stuff is you can change. I would guess that probably 99% of the people who use this service go in and only change graphics or any of the settings based on that settings screen when you go in and you hit options in the sim. And a lot of that, and for the most part, that is all you need. But there's so much more that you can tweak and adjust and make your own. Make the sim your own and make it behave in so many different ways. So, we find this. We thought this would be a useful way to kind of introduce you guys to some of the different settings you might not be aware of. So, let us know if this is actually, if this is useful, and if there's anything in particular that you're seeing in the app INI file that you're saying, hey, huh? And maybe we can look into it and shed some light upon it, and maybe be a little more, make it a little bit more easier to understand and helpful for you. So anyway, moving right along, make sure that there's some housekeeping here. Make sure that you send us in a picture of your cockpit and your settings and all that good stuff to let us know, so we can put that into a show on February. The plan is to have it in next week. We might move it later on. I don't know. I haven't discussed this with Chad, but we'll see. We got several responses so far. Actually, well, a bunch of responses so far. So keep them coming if you haven't done so already. Keep them coming into us. The only reason why I say this is because February is going to be a bit weird with shows, and I'll mention that a little bit later. So we might, the opportunity for the show a little bit later in February might be a better idea for that. But we'll see. Anyway, for now, keep sending them in. Even if you don't make our deadline, whenever that may be, which may be next week, then keep sending them in, and we'll find a way to show them off and talk about them anyway. So best way to send those in is to our feedback email address, which is feedback@iRacingtodayradio.com. That's the best way, because that way we're not picking things off Twitter and, and getting screenshots off the Vine that you sent, or, we don't have to Snapchat you, or it's not up there on Pinterest or Instagram, or for the love of Pete, don't put it in Facebook, because that's a devil's playground that I never go into. So, let's just stick with the feedback email address. That works for me. It should work for you. Email's good. You can send pictures. You can send information. It's all good. But anyway, keep sending those in. Thanks to everybody who sent them in so far. There's been some pretty cool stuff. I'm beginning to realize that I am in the vast majority of people who are involved with this show in one way or another that does not have triple screens. I'll tell you that much. Getting a little bit jealous here and a little bit anxious for the time when I can actually hook that up, because, man, a lot of you guys have triple screens out there, and it's like, wow, I thought that was an anomaly, but based on what we're seeing so far, that's not the case. So,
No.
although none of you are going to top Ricky Thompson, is that his name? I think it's Ricky Thompson, who
Yes.
sent us in his mobile setup, because apparently he was traveling for work or something.
It's his iRacing mobile.
So he was in a hotel, so he had his wheel attached to an ironing board in front of a desk with a laptop on it. So none of you are going to beat that.
Also, he could compete in the 24 hours, I believe.
You would have to really time that, because, I mean, if he stays at the same hotels that I do, where, like, every 24 hours they reset your internet, it's like, now you got to log back in. Imagine that. You're sitting there driving down the backstretch of Daytona, all of a sudden thing pops in, please log into your internet. Oh, God! That could go bad quick. But
It's like, scramble. What's my password? What's the password?
but anyway, yes, thanks for everybody who's sending those in, and keep them coming. We will have a special show dedicated to you and your sim rigs and how you guys go out there and race. So, I think that's about it. We have nothing else to talk about, I don't think. That's the show. Is it?
Yeah. So that will about do it for this week. So, I want to thank everyone for.
We've got a little bit of time left, so why don't we talk about Daytona?
Why? Nothing happened. I mean,
although, actually, before we actually get into our Daytona 24 experiences, one quick note: I've been talking about the Global Sim Racing Channel guys. I did some stuff for them last year. I'm actually starting my first series with them as a co-broadcaster. That'll be in with them for every race of that season. It's not every week; it's like every 3 to 4 weeks, so it kind of works out better with my schedule. And that series is called the Pacific Majors, and we have our first broadcast race this Sunday. I will, of course, be tweeting that out and everything. Our broadcast starts at 8:45 Eastern Time at night on Sunday evening, and it is, and here's why I segue to it now, at Daytona Road. So, the Pacific Majors, they do both oval, both oval and road, and they change cars up throughout the season. It's a 10 race season over, 13 race season over 10 months, I think it is. But changing cars, changing between road and oval. This particular week, they're doing Daytona Road with the Corvette DP, the GT1 car, and the GT3 cars, or at least the BMW and the McLaren. So it should be an interesting race. I know when I talk about the DP, I got a pretty good feeling for how that car handles that track, because I've did it for 6 hours over the weekend, so I'm feeling pretty confident in being able to talk about that car. But anyway, just want to put that out there, so I will put it out on Twitter when we go live. That is, of course, with the Global Sim Racing channel. If you go to their main page, there'll be a link there as well. But that is 8:45 Eastern on Sunday night with the Pacific Majors series. So it's my first shot with them as co-commentator, so I'm really looking forward to that. I've done a little bit of things here and there, but this is going to be my first time at the big table, man, with these guys, and they're a class act. That's why I decided to work with these guys. They really got their stuff together when it comes to this broadcasting stuff, and I'm really excited to be part of that experience. So tune in Sunday and come join me, and we'll have the chat room up and stuff like that as well. So, anyway, moving on.
Now,
It was a
before
good
we go to
segue.
Daytona, before we go to Daytona,
Oh no!
I do want to mention one more thing. We've had some people in the last month or so ask about doing another iRacing Today radio show golf tournament, of course, on the golf club. So, we've had some interest, obviously, so I think we should try to get that booted back up. I don't know. I could get it done in time for the start of February.
Did you ever finish that course?
No, that course is not even close. I will tell you this much, that with my course that I'm building, I am 70% done. I'm getting there. See, when you build a course manually, John Hensley found this out one night because John was like, "Yeah, man, I made a golf course," and he was like, "I'm gonna launch it. You want to go play it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So we go play it, and then I was like, "You want to see mine?" So he's like, "Yeah, sure." So I streamed privately just to him my course. This is I only had 9 holes built, and started showing him all the different techniques and all the stuff that I was using. He was like, "I didn't really build my golf course, did I?" I was like, "No."
You hit the auto generate button and then tweaked a few things.
Yes. So I'm actually building it. I'm not picking on John for the record, but and so yeah, my course is getting there. I do have all 18 holes laid out. I am in the process of putting the trees. I'm thinking I'm actually going to go play it here after we're done here, and hopefully by the end of the weekend I might could get up to like 80% done or something like that. And then I'm going to have to play it several times and kind of tweak and fine tune, and then it'll be the finishing touches, and eventually I'll get there. Maybe the next tournament after this one, I can host it. We'll see. Everybody's going to hate my course because it's going to kick their butt. But I'm not cocky or anything. So yeah, back to the tournament, which was the original discussion about this, was, let's see, February 1st is Monday. So I might try to launch us a tournament. I don't know what. I'll pick an easy course. I don't know what course, but I'll pick one out, and maybe we'll launch it for the month of, or for 30 days,
Right.
which will basically be the whole month of February. But February is not really 30 days this month. It's 29 for this year. So come play in our tourney. It'll be under iRacing Today radio show. I might just call it that. There's really no need to put golf tournament after that. So
It's pretty obvious you're in the golf club.
Yeah.
So if you're, yeah, so yeah, just and like again, because you have the whole month to play, there's no rush. That's why we can just say, hey, we're going to do this in a few days, and it's okay because you have the whole month to play your 4 rounds. So don't stress out over it. But we did it before and had some people come in and have some fun, and we got to report on it, and just a fun little diversion, just something else to do when we're not doing fun races or endurance races or anything else that we can involve you guys with. Just another way to kind of say, hey, you know what, golf's fun too.
yeah, race car drivers golf. I mean, come on.
They do all the time. I mean, you can't race all the time.
Yeah. So now we will officially go to Daytona, and we will talk about the big time weekend in the 24 hours. That, of course, happened last week as a part of the Road Warrior series. Now, for starters, a couple things happened. Number one, the morning of the race, as some of you will know that participated, the website was a little iffy. It was kind of there, it was kind of not there. Some people only got it to work in certain web browsers, like Internet Explorer, for example, which blows my mind. Internet Explorer is the actual name. But, and some people were getting it to work in Chrome, like me. I had no problems. Trevor couldn't get it to load.
Nope. I think I was
Adam,
like out of the group that got up at the very beginning of the race, because again, not everybody had to, but out of the group of us that we did, I think I was the last guy in.
yeah.
So
the website was a little crazy. A lot of people had problems getting into the server. Now, when the server actually did launch, I don't know the exact number, but there was a good chunk of people in there. So I do believe that the majority of the people who were trying to sign up actually did make it into the race. But because not everyone did, who was trying, and iRacing recognized this and recognized the fact that the website was a little wish-washy. They actually launched a second server. I believe it was at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, so 1430 GMT, I believe is when it was. And they actually launched a second room to help accommodate the people who did not make it into the first server.
Right.
So I thought that was a cool deal on iRacing's behalf because, after all, it was kind of their screw up in a way where the site was not exactly functioning correctly. So hopefully everyone got to race that tried.
Yeah, and that was a. I don't think I don't recollect them ever doing that before. I've seen them do it where only half the people got in, and they've killed the server, killed the ones that were running, and then restarted things and whatnot, which always ticked off the people who were, had the pole and were out in the front and all that good stuff. So, for future reference, iRacing, the way you did it was the way you should do it. You let the people who are in, let them keep going, make more. And then the people, who obviously had problems in the first place, because you're not going to have that great influx of people again, the strain's going to be less on the servers to try to get people in. So that was probably the perfect way to do it.
Yep. So I believe there were 13 different splits, if I'm not mistaken.
That is what I heard.
For the race. Yes, 13. I'm looking at it now. Of course, we mentioned that we had 3 teams, and all 3 teams were in a different split. So we had them covered.
We had them covered, and it was unfortunate because we were thinking with the way that the iRating worked out that IRTM 1 and the GT team were going to be in the same split. Was where we were thinking we could pull that off, but unfortunately that was not the case.
But they were close. I believe the GT team was in split 11, and I believe IRTM 1 was in split 10, and IRTM 2 made split 4. So quite the big jump up the list there, thanks to Dean's iRating. So we will start off by talking about the show team, which of course was driven by Jeff McPherson, Matt Murphy, and Ben Stock, who jumped in and did a pretty darn well. First of all, let me say this: there were 3 of them. Originally there were supposed to be 4, but there were 3 of them, so they had to do 4-hour stints twice, which
is a long
really
time.
Tough.
Yeah, that is as Jeff put it in his forum post in our team forums. 4 hours is a long time to be behind the wheel.
Yeah. It is. But their race was, I think, kind of up and down throughout the race. I know that Matt started in the car for them and got off to a pretty good start for them. They qualify?
Started 26th overall, 7th in GT3 is where they actually qualified.
That's what I was thinking. So anyways, they had a pretty interesting race, and Jeff, as Trevor said, Jeff kind of gave a long analysis of the race. So I'll pick parts out that was interesting. But they had 19 Daytona prototypes in their room and 24 in GT3. Now, the interesting thing, apparently, is that, of course, I said Matt took the start of the race, and apparently, like, everybody in GT decided to start from the pits. Because he says that they were the last car on the starting grid, and they were 7th.
And you just said 23, I think it was? Okay.
24. So
that's a lot of people starting from the pits, man.
I know. He does say that Matt got some very cosmetic damage in the first hairpin, turn 3 on the left rear. Otherwise, it was a very clean stint from Matt to start off the race. And let's see, I believe that Matt drove 130 laps in his first 4 hours. They were in 17th overall and 7th in GT. And then I love how Jeff talks all about Matt's stint, and then he's just like, I did my 4 hours, can't remember anything, and then I handed it to Ben.
I drove for 4 hours. Nothing happened.
I just love that. It's like there's paragraph about Matt, little sentence about me, another paragraph about Ben. So that got them up to 8 hours in, 256 laps in, and they were 16th, fifth overall. And then you just kind of skip through some of this because we're not going to read all about this. But um, let's see. Then let's see. Ben handed it back over to Matt. It was 12 hours in. They were in 15th place, sixth in class.
Actually, and one thing that that happened in between there was that let's see. After my first pit stop, his internet, and this was Jeff, caused him some problems, and he had to reset his modem. So they actually lost
Oh
about
yes.
10 minutes waiting for his modem to reset, and then for iRacing to let him back in. Now, a side note to that, apparently a lot of people had the problem that popped up in Spa, that when you left the server, you couldn't get back in. Is a problem that some people actually suffered during this race, which is apparently something that happened at Spa as well. Supposedly, you're
Yeah.
supposed to be able to just jump in and out as you will, like we talked about last week, but apparently some people couldn't. So,
What happened was the race, I think, is set up in the favor of GMT time. So when GMT time switches over to Sunday, iRacing, the website, gets all confused and says, "Wait a minute, there are no scheduled sessions in this series on Sunday. Why the flip are you trying to join the race? This is not allowed."
there's no race. You're silly.
So that was the problem at Spa, and that was the problem this year. I did not have that problem. I think iRacing was kind of on top of it pretty quickly. Um, it seemed to be an issue, definitely for sure, there for a while, but I think they got it nipped in the bud pretty quickly.
Yeah,
So,
and let me tell you, when we actually discovered that problem, and skipping ahead, I'll talk about my race in a minute here, but we actually had people discover that and put it in the chat. Like some people warned us in our room saying, "Hey, people are having this problem, so if you have teammates, tell them not to log out." And like just as we were reading that, Adam, who was the guy who was going to relieve
logged
me,
out.
had just said, "I just logged out." I'm like, "Uh oh." This is a bad feeling because like I'm in the car and it's like he's next to replace me. It's like, well, I hope you can get back in because I don't want to drive it for 9 hours.
Oh, that would stink. So, anyways, back to the race. They were 12 hours in, 15th overall, 6th in the GT class. He then goes on to say that Matt did his usual stint of fast, consistent, and safe. And Matt handed a car over to me, this is Jeff speaking, on lap 5:13, 16 hours in, 14th overall, 5th in GT. And that's where the internet went down for Ben for the 10-minute deal. And then they talk about he hands over the car that needed to be, or that was repaired rather. It had a couple of run-ins throughout the race. They had some issues with some DPs and some walls. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So he handed over a repaired car to Ben on lap 6:04, and Ben was prepared to take it the rest of the way, the last 4 hours here. So this was hour 20 basically. And they were 15th overall and 6th in GT. And Ben's stint was quite interesting. I don't know, should we read this? Because it's kind of interesting. I'm going to read it.
All right.
Ben had an incident on lap 655 when the second place car in GT had a brain fart at turn 1 and missed his braking point trying to pass about 3 GT cars at once rather than waiting. Smart move
Yeah.
by that gentleman. He then spun, missed the two GT cars that were directly ahead of him, and then of course hit Ben, who was in front of the entire group, and put himself into the outside wall and killed his chances at a second place finish. That was the other team. He then goes on to say that the incident apparently hurt our car because Ben had to take a tow because the car pulled sharply to the left, so no drive forward. Got the car repaired and went back out. Made maybe a couple of mile per hour down at the very top end of the gear, but it was okay driving wise. Ben pitted with just over an hour to go. At this time, Jeff was spotting for him, and after a couple of laps, Jeff said we're going to be very close on fuel. When we pitted, we were 15th. I'm reading this as Jeff. When we pitted, we were 15th overall and 6th in GT, but was about seventh was about 45 seconds behind us. Ben tried to save a little here and there. Again, there is no fuel mapping on the Ford GT, so you won what you brung. And then with about 10 laps to go, this is where things get really interesting for the show team, and in a way almost comical, but not really. He says, with 10 laps to go, the seventh place car closed the gap to about 15 seconds, and I thought, this is Jeff again speaking, that we would be safe on fuel, so I told Ben not to worry about the fuel and to go for it. Then with 5 laps, I realized I was dead wrong.
Yeah, and I was in TeamSpeak when this was all happening too, because I'm hearing them just calculating. It's like, yeah, you should be fine. You should be fine. You should be fine. I'm sorry. You need to pit.
I really hate to break this to you, Ben, but you're going to need a pit.
Oh.
And he says that he realized they would need a splash and go, so he set it up. So no white flag with 30 seconds left, I told Ben to pit because we only had zero point 0.7 of a gallon left and 1 lap to go and was never going to make it. So we pitted as the white flag came out, and to my surprise, the 7th place car, who had been catching them a little bit, also pitted. So obviously they were pretty close as well. And they had closed the gap to 3 seconds before that. He then says, we managed to leave our pit first, and we are trundling down the pit lane about a second in front or so. And then at the sharp left exiting the pits, which everybody knows about.
Mm-hmm.
And for the record, is that a passing zone?
In practice, man, I had people set them up. Like, I just stopped the car and reset. It's like, because they try to pass me. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a new car because you apparently got places to be, man.
Because this guy thought it was. And says that, let's see, Jeff says, the 7th place car tries to cut the corner and overtake on the grass. He does not make it and hits our car. And then the pit road wall nose first, blocking the exit of the track there on the pit road. He has to reverse to let us through. He does more damage to himself in that moment, so we ended up beating him to 6th place by about 4 seconds after 24 hours of racing. So
Right.
What an ending.
Yeah, and actually watching it, because I was watching when that all happened, because I was listening on the live TeamSpeak and I heard them talk about it, but then of course because the stream was a little bit behind, it gave me a chance to make sure that was the one that I was looking at that time, because I have my laptop beside me. It's like, okay, what are they talking about? And then it's like, oh. But looking at it, I mean, whether he was trying to pass or not, like he could have very easily just been pushing it and got his wheels on the grass. I mean, I know during practice I spun out a crap ton trying to get out of that stupid pit lane as well. I think it was emotions were running high. You realize you have a chance of gaining another position at the end, last lap of a 24-hour race, and probably overdrove it and made an error. I will say, though, on in that speaking of that the excuse me.
Team?
The team owner of the team who's driving at that point in time actually did take the time to find us and email us through the feedback email to apologize, saying it was a great race. Thank you for the racing. Sorry. So I do give him credit for that, because
Yes.
there's apologizing in chat, which they apparently did, but we had the driver chat muted at that time. But to actually go that extra step and just find out the team that you were racing against, email them to apologize. Yeah, that was a class act, and I did definitely appreciate that, and I responded as such to them. So I'm sure it was an honest mistake with emotions running high, and not a hey, I'm going to take this fool out.
Well, I mean, it's the last lap. I mean, you're trying to get 6, so I understand. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that was definitely a class act move. That's the way that you should apologize. It's okay to, it's good to apologize in the server, but sending something after the server's long gone and you're way out of it, sending an email or a private message is definitely that's 2 thumbs up for me.
Yep. Absolutely. So
So in
sixth
the
place.
end,
Yeah.
yes, sixth place in class for Jeff, Matt, and Ben. 15th overall, and they finished 64 laps down, which doesn't really matter because they're obviously in a GT car.
Yeah.
So the DP is going to be flying by them. They managed to, let's see here. They had a total of 112 incident points, and which is not too bad considering.
Over 24 hours.
And yeah, and each one of them gained a lot of safety rating despite all the incidents. Jeff gained 3.42, and he's almost at a 4.99. He's at a 4.89.
3.
3.42. 3.
Dang.
And he had 19 incident points for the whole race. He had the lowest out of everybody, but 3.42.
Like, I don't know. How would you like it? You get some safety rating, and you get some safety rating. Everybody gets some safety rating.
More specifically, in Jeff's favor. Matt gained 0.45, and Ben gained 1.18. The interesting thing about this team that I knew it, but I don't think I totally processed it until I just looked at their results before we went live with our show. 2 drivers from the UK, 1 from Virginia. Now that's a group for you. So I'm sure they enjoyed each other's company. And Jeff made 249 laps total. Matt made 253. And Ben made the most at 256. So quite a long time in the race car. 4 hours, like we said, is a buttload of time. And all 3 of them, I'm sure, were ready for bed after that one.
Yeah, and of course, big thanks to Matt for coming over and joining on the team and having some fun with us. And it was his stream that allowed us to watch the GT3 guys do their race. So he streamed the entire 24 hours off to our website. So big thanks to Matt for committing his computer for the entire day and big portions of his day to racing. So I hope he had a lot of fun. Sounds like he did, and he'll be back for some more.
Yeah, and actually during the race, his power went out in his house. So the stream did go down for a little bit, but he got it right back up and going. Unfortunately, the power did not stay off, so he was able to continue racing and streaming. So yeah, like you said, big thanks to Matt for coming over. He's already said, I want to be at the 12 hours. So
Right.
Looking forward to having him back again. So what happened with IRTM1, Mr. Cameron?
Well, IRTM1, like I said, began with me trying to get in and not getting in and having a slight panic attack, but managed to get in with plenty of time. See, it didn't matter if I got in, but the fact that I was streaming the whole thing, it's like, well, I really want to catch the beginning of the race, type thing. We had Larry start off for us, and that was, I think that was the, that's just the biggest stress point of these races. I mean, eventually you spread out, but, you're still always bunched in together, but for that very first turn, because turn 1 at the Daytona Road Course, it's a tough turn. There's not a lot of room to do it side by side. It's real easy to miss your braking point. So I was a bit nervous at the beginning, but Larry handled it like a champ. Everybody, actually, it looked like, from what I could see, obviously I was concentrating on Larry's car, but from what I could see, everybody was real smart. Everybody let them spread out. Nobody was pushing the issues for the first couple laps. The DP cars, like we mentioned, they get real twitchy on cold tires, so that's one of the reasons why I was really nervous, because I was thinking, what if somebody, I don't know, who just happened to get a really good qualifying lap, doesn't realize that or forgets that, and they're in front of the entire field, and then everything goes horribly wrong. So, fortunately, that did not happen, and everybody just kind of spread out. I'm thinking back, Larry did a real good job for the first bunch of his stint. He had a few offs, and it was man, he was getting real good at spinning the car out and not hitting things, which is a skill I apparently watched and picked up on, because later on I became real good at that too. But Larry did a great job of keeping the car going the right way. Had a little bit of damage here and there with the. just a little bit of cosmetic damage here and there, like nothing major. Now, about an hour and a half, I don't know, about halfway through his stint, give or take, we had mentioned before that a lot of the guys on the teams happened to be on the East Coast, where there was a major snowstorm happening. So I'm sitting there broadcasting. I was supposed to have gone to bed, as it's like, okay, get up, start the stream 6 o'clock, watch the first couple laps, go to bed. That way I'm good and rested. Of course, I knew that wasn't what I was going to do. So I stayed there, and Adam stayed on there with us as well and was helping spotting and whatnot. And Adam had stepped away to grab some breakfast. So it was just me and Larry in there. And then Larry pipes up on the TeamSpeak and it's like, apparently the floodwaters are coming, and I need to go move my car and stuff. Trevor, can you hop in the car? Like, and I'm half asleep. I am not ready to do nothing. Like, because my first stint wasn't until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I was nowhere in the mental frame of mind to jump in the car. It's like, well, you got to do what you got to do, man. So he hops out, I hop in the car. So now, an hour and a half into the race, now I'm doing a stint. It's like, well, okay then. So that was fun. I managed to actually keep the car going in, one in the right direction. I don't believe I even had any offs during that first stint, and that was probably the best way to jump into it, because I wasn't in my mind about how getting ready. Okay, I got to make sure I got to do da 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 da, because that's how I was when I actually did my first real stint, and we'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, I did about a half stint for Larry. We decided, about halfway through the fuel run, I'd come in, he'd get back in the car. Everything was fine with his house. It was just the fact that, his house is actually in a position where it's fine from... Apparently floodwaters are expected there when storms happen. So the house was fine, but his car and his bike were in a bad spot that he had to move to the non-floodplain area of the street. Of course, my first question is, you're in the middle of a snowstorm. Why is there water? But those East Coast people, I don't know, man. But it's like there should... Yes,
Well,
you put a bunch of snow down, and then it gets hot and it melts. I see that. You're still snowing.
I will stop you, though. Larry actually got more rain than snow.
Okay.
So that's why.
So, Larry's back. Everything's fine. He hops back in the car, finishes out his stint. Apparently that threw him off because, well, between that, the fact that he had to stop his stint in the middle, and then apparently because there was stuff going on with various things, his phone kept ringing, so he kept getting distracted because people are sending him texts about the floodwaters and people...
Don't drive distracted.
See? And he had a couple of offs because of it. Not much damage to the car. I think by the end of it, I think we went through 4 nose cones on that thing, but that's okay. So he had a little bit of damage here and there. I know he ended up getting doored by a GT car. I don't remember if that was his first stint or his second stint, to be honest with you. I suppose I should have actually started the whole story with where we started. That would have been a good place. We started in 8th in the DPs. So, and we kind of, through Larry's stint, the first half and the second half, we had ended up around, I think we had got up as high as 4th, I think, at one point in time. But we ended up falling back through having to make the extra pit stop, and Larry did definitely get a little bit of damage, had a couple of offs there. So we fell back a bit, into the pack. It was funny, there was a while we were actually spending, it's like, okay, we'd fall back, it's like, now we're not, there's GT cars ahead of us. So then we work and we work and work, it's like, okay, well, we can't feel good about ourselves until we're ahead of all the GT cars. No offense to the GT cars, but if a DP car is behind the GTs, you're doing something wrong. Like something has gone wrong in your race. So then we work back and say, okay, now we're ahead of all the GTs. Let's start working our way back up. And then something would happen. This happened throughout the race several times for, I think, all 3 of us, or all 4 of us. Then we'd get back in front of all the GT cars again. So, anyway, so Larry finished off his stint. Roy got into the car for his monster stint. He decided, somebody in scheduling, I'm guessing Chad, but Roy agreed to it.
No, Roy. All Roy.
decided that in order he just wanted to get in and get it over with. Apparently, it was like a Band-Aid or something. This 24-hour race is like, I just want it done. So he decided to do his 6 hours all in a row because, as you do. So, actually,
and no less, it was in his time zone during the night for him, not during the day. During the night.
I know. How did Roy? I don't understand, man. I mean, you had all the opportunity in the world to do the stuff that in the middle of the night for us, which probably would have been a reasonable time for you, but nope, you picked a crappy stint and then made it real long. And did a great job of it, but actually Roy jumped in the car a little early for Larry because with all the phones and stuff he was getting distracted, so he actually came on and said, all right, Roy, are you ready? Can you get in the car? And I can empathize with that. So Roy came in a little early for Larry so he could actually go take care of all the stuff that was happening around with floodwaters and people texting and saying, hey, did you know there's floodwaters? Things like of this nature. So Roy jumped in the car, was having a great stint, was picking us up spots. Larry jumped in the middle of his 6 hours to give him a break so he could get off and grab a cup of coffee. And so Larry jumped in for a one fuel run in the middle of Roy's 6 hours. Did a great job, kept us going. A lot of details here. I'm thinking, I'm glancing over some of the details. You can actually be looking at,
And this is the guy that before the show was like, I don't really remember what happened.
This is true. That's why I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, Well, let's see, from Larry's, he said that we had fallen back as far as 15th by the time that he handed the car over to Roy. The car was fine at that point in time. Actually, the car was basically, we did a real good job of keeping that car in one piece for the most part. But Roy did 3 fuel runs, and then Larry jumped in to give him a break for a fuel run. And by the end of Roy's stint, he had got himself back up to 9th position. Roy had a great thing. He was just nice and steady, putting down really good lap times, picking up spot after spot. So we were up to 9th, which is when I got in the car. And like I said earlier, having Larry go, get in the car now, I went up and did half a fuel run. Everything was great because I was not ready. I had time to think. And watching everybody doing such a great job because I was watching all the streams and all the teams were having a great race. So I jumped in the car. Here we go. I know how this goes. I'm ready. Let's go in. I came out of pit lane. You do that first right-hand turn, the horseshoe turn or whatever it is there, that kind of goes in that little boot thing. And then you have the kink, and then there's that sharp right-hand turn to get ready before you do the left-hand turn back onto the NASCAR track. And put the tires on the grass, put myself into a spin, and sideswipe the tire barrier. I have done officially 2 turns, and I have crashed the car.
Oh man!
It's well then, okay.
This is how this is gonna go.
I got in the car like I said, I got in the car when Larry said go, and I said okay, and I went, and everything was great. And I had hours to think about it, and I ditched the car. Fortunately, I had, when I got in there, it was enough of a, I felt the car slipping out when I hit the grass, so I had managed to just gas it enough so I was presenting the side of the car, not the nose when I hit the tires. So I made it into a controlled crash by the time I got to the tires. And it wasn't a hard hit by any means. So got back on track. Say, okay, focus. Got back on track and then got into my groove. Like I said, the DP car is real slippery on the first lap or two on the cold tires, and I knew it. Didn't care. Let's go in this corner. Whee! But so anyway, I got back into my groove. Everything was fine. The stint was fairly. Well, I was going to say fairly uneventful, but I did manage to ditch it a couple times. I had Roy, Roy loves to watch me race. I swear he must, because he knows that he's going to tell me things that I should not do, and then he's going to watch, and then he's going to watch me do the things he told me not to do. Like very specific things. He will tell me exactly what I should not do. And then I swear he has a little timer that goes in his head that says, okay, time till Trevor does the thing I just told him not to do. One of the things he told me not to do was he said, hey, here's something I learned during my stint. If you're going down this, the backstretch towards the bus stop, and if you don't catch the GT car that you're trying to pass by, say, shortly after the exit of the, NASCAR 2, just back off, give him the corner. You'll pass him on the exit anyway because, you're the faster car, which I knew. Don't bother to put yourself on the inside and try to make the corner. Sure, you can make it there, but you're going to have your entry is going to be compromised because you're coming at a different angle. You're going to have more speed than you think because you're missing your braking point. And you're probably just going to put it through the grass. I said, okay, Roy, that's a great idea. And I think the first GT car I came up on, I said, well, I've got enough speed to pass him, so I'll just go on his left and go into the bus stop. And then through the bus stop. And out the bus stop on the other side. And then said, oh, right, that's what Roy said not to do. I did it twice. Then I stopped doing it.
Oh, man. Poor Roy. We gotta get some kind of gift for Roy or something. I mean, just what he puts up with you.
Watching my IndyCar races, same thing. He'll tell me, don't pass people like this or don't put yourself in this position. And then, there goes Trevor doing just what he told me not to do. Don't let them, don't let them pass you, or don't set up the passes in the corners. Wait until the straight stretch. Okay, I'll just go wide in this corner. Oh, look, grass, wee. But anyway, during my stint, I managed to grass it a few times there. I think I went through the bus stop, the middle grass part of the bus stop twice during my 3 hours, and either Chad has had a stroke or he's frozen. Okay, no, he's moving. Okay. Well, you were so still, man. I thought our internet had bugged out on us.
I was waiting for the next comical part of your story.
I think I grassed it off on that horseshoe turn. I definitely did that a couple times. I found out that a great way to put yourself into the grass is when you're going down that after the horseshoe turn. There's that little kink there, and you have a car that's faster than you. Faster behind you. A great way to go in the grass is if you just kind of move off to the right and try to let him pass on the left where it does the kink. Oh yeah, that'll send you off the grass. No time. Did that a couple times. Fortunately, there's like a little access. Well, I don't think it's an access road. I think it's almost an alternate turn for that hairpin at the end. So you'll skid through the grass, then you'll find the pavement, you'll get traction, and then you just drive back on the track. It's all cool. I don't even think it gives you a time penalty for it. Maybe it's quicker. I don't know if you perfected your drift technique. But in the end, after all that didn't cause me much damage. However, there was one particular incident where, and I was told, hit whatever you want, don't kill the car. Like, go on the grass all you want, just don't hit walls, don't hit other cars. Okay. Again, 2 turns in. Boom, wall. All right. We won't do that one again. And I didn't. All right, cars. Well, I got that taken care of, too, because we're going into that same bloody horseshoe turn again. And there was a GT car and a DP ahead of me, and I'm watching them, and my spidey senses tingled as we were going down past the pit road exit there. I'm like, those guys don't look like they're getting along too well. And it's like, I should, and I already had the thoughts, like, I should back off from this. Something's going to happen. But I didn't because, this is all happening in the span of like 2 seconds. So we go down there. I get ready to set up my corner. The GT car went wide, so he was way off to the left. So I slowed down even more so I could hit the apex really sharp and stay to the right because it looked like he was going to go left. When he went left, he apparently hit the DP car. So I go into the corner, and it was basically, it's like, okay, apex, 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 door. And, like, he spun it like right in front of me. Like, it was like I'm literally looking at the apex, and now there's the DP there instead of the apex of the corner. So I hit him, but fortunately, like I said, I was slowing down more than normal for that corner because I wanted to hit that corner really sharp to stay to the right. So when I hit him, like, I barely hit him with the nose. So it was just like, bang, hit him. He just casually just pulls forward out of the way. I just kind of pull back on the track. He does his little Yui. We keep going. I don't remember if I got meatballed on that one. I think I did. There's a bug with the DP car that it meatballs you if you breathe on it too heavily. It's weird. Like, I'm hoping that they fix that soon. Yeah, I know. It's like you go up to it, it's like, ding. Oh, well, meatball. It's like, everything just falls apart on it. It's like, I told you we shouldn't have made it out of plasticine. It's only made of glass and clay, man. Why'd you touch it? So in the end, in my stint, I went through the grass several times, tire barrier once, and nosed right into the door of another car once. Although that one was not my fault. Everything else was. So I gave the car back in decent shape. I believe I gave it back in 9th. So I basically maintained position through all of that. Didn't lose any. Didn't gain any. I was definitely the slower of the four of us. Like, my fastest lap time was the slowest. It was, but not by much. I mean, like I said, I was more working on consistent laps than raw speed. And I was the pace I was racing was comfortable. I know, like, man, it was an experience. Like, coming up on being the faster car, because coming up on those GT cars, like, it was, you just catch them at the dumbest time, like, and it's like, and you just have to plan for it. And my lap times were probably slower because a lot of times I'd look at where I was going to catch them, and then I would back off in such a fashion that they knew I was not going to I was giving them the corner. Like, I'd pull in right behind them to communicate, take your corner, I'll pass you after, it's fine. I mean, through the infield section, you're pretty comparable on speed to the GT cars. You're still faster, but not by a large margin. So if you just hang out with them for a couple corners, you're just going to whiz by them when you hit the straight stretch anyway. So why put your car in that position? And that's kind of the philosophy I went with. So anyway, Adam jumped into the car. He did a much better stint than me. He pulled himself up into 7th, I think. By the time I took the car back over, I jumped back in. I believe I managed to do the bus stop trick one more time just to make sure that I had it all right. It's like, oh, right, don't put your car in that place. Now, other people were doing that, and that's fine because they had the skill set to adjust their speed and their angle to be fine. I always just backed off and take the corner. When we get back on the straight stretch, I know I'm going to whiz by it, so it's going to be fine. My second stint was, fairly uneventful, if I recall. Like I said, Adam's stint was, again, not much happened. He gained a couple spots on it, for us. And then, I jumped back in the car. I think I grassed it once at the beginning of it. And then fatigue started to set in. And it got to a point where I got caught behind a DP car at the end of that stint, and I knew I was faster than him, but I couldn't get around him safely. Like, I tried a couple times and grassed it. Like, I was starting to make dumb decisions, and I could see myself making dumb moves at the end of that stint. It was like, what? I am tired. My legs hurt. I know I'm old. I'm a wimp. I understand this, but I was tired. Like, I had a 25-minute power snooze between stints to try to get my brain going, because I'd been up, I had to get up early to start the stream, and I didn't go to sleep as early as I should have the night before, so I was real tired. So as I put it on to the guys on TeamSpeak, I was starting to see bunnies at this point in time, just jumping across the track. Like, my eyes were, I didn't see bunnies, but my eyes were starting to play tricks on me, like I'm I'd be focused, and then all of a sudden I'd realize like I'm focusing so hard I don't remember what turn I'm in anymore. Like I was tired. Like I would not have actually been operating like an actual motor vehicle in the condition I was in. Put it that way. I would have not gone on the road. So it got to the point, and then Adam didn't show up until like really close to the end of my stint, and I'm again starting to have a panic attack. It's like, I hope he woke up. I hope he woke up. Because by the time I was getting rid of my car, getting out of the car at 12:30 my time, that's like 2:30, Adam's time. It's like, He said he wasn't sure if he was going to sleep because he was all amped up. And I know how that goes. You get out of the car and it's like, I can't sleep because I'm so excited and everything's, the adrenaline's going. And then it's like gets to a point where it's about an hour before you have to get back in the car. And then you're tired. So you're just going to close your eyes for a few minutes. And then you don't get up again. Like, I could see that happening. So it's all the scenarios are going through my head. But Adam showed up. It's like, okay, good. He's here. I know I have relief. And then I was going through my fuel run. I was about, I'm like at 5 laps left in the fuel run. I'm like struggling at this point in time. It's like, and like I said, I'm making stupid mistakes. I know I'm doing it. And I got to, there was like, I had to go around 2 more times the next time by. And, I just said to Adam, it's like, Adam, are you ready? He says, yeah, well, as ready as I'm going to be, I guess. Like, okay, I'm bringing the car in, man. I got to get out of the car. I'm gonna wreck this thing if I do any more laps in this. I've got to get out of the car. He says, okay. So we go in. Adam hops in, and I can't remember if it was and I stayed up long enough to watch the first couple laps, and I don't remember if it was the very first lap or the second lap after he got in the car. But he's doing the section back onto the NASCAR. Turn 2, and he was right behind the GT car, and the GT car typically, they'll pick a steady line to go through, when they come out of that corner. A lot of times, if there's a DP behind them, they'll go high to get out of the way. But this guy kind of picked a middle way through there when he was coming back on, and then decided low instead. But of course, Adam had already committed to low. So Adam's like on the yellow line, and the GT car comes down and just doors him and sends him into the grass. It's like, oh no. But fortunately, it wasn't much damage on the car. It was, there's a lot of room to spin before you hit anything solid down there. So, but that was how Adam's stint started. I can't speak to the rest of it because I went to bed. So, because I had to get back up again in 5 hours to stop the stream and watch the end of the race. So, let's see, I'm just looking at Adam's, yeah. No, he didn't actually bring any real light on what happened during those 3 hours. I'm sure they were great. Although Larry did mention that, because I gave it over in 7th position to Adam, I believe it was. Excuse me. So Larry comes in for the final stint. We had moved it up to 7th. We were 3 laps down to 6th, which was mostly my doing. Because remember, I think I left and I was 3 laps down on 6th. Adam had given me the car. We were on the same lap, but we were like 45 seconds behind 6th position. Throughout the course of my run, I lost 3 laps to him. He was just faster than me. So Larry took over with us 3 laps down on 6th position, and he did manage to gain those laps back through hook or by crook. Don't know if it was because they had problems or whatnot, but he ended up actually getting ahead of 7th position, got us into 6th position, and then he was actually a whole lap up on 7th, but then the GTs, one of the GTs, as they seem to have done a lot. Now, I will say that our split was actually, for the most part, really good. Like, most guys were really cordial. They were, if they made a mistake, they were apologizing. They were staying out of each other's way in the, with the 2 different classes. It was a pretty good stint. I mean, you're going to have people. And Larry found one of those people. And he couldn't make up his mind if he was going to go high, low, or stay in the middle. pulled down right in front of Larry just as he was passing him going into NASCAR Turn 3 at 180 miles an hour. So kind of did some serious damage. And the only serious damage we had the entire time, like we are less than 3 hours away from the end of the race, and we get our first more than a minute of repairs. And he ended up getting 11 minutes of repairs, which put us back into 7th. We lost that, the 6th position that Larry had gained. So, in the end, we started in 8th position and ended up finishing in 7th. So, overall, a good experience. There were some mistakes. There was some panic here and there with people jumping in and out of cars and having, things go on. But, overall we did pretty good. And what I can't figure out is, in the end of it, I did more laps than the other 3 guys. I mean, I did that one half stint for Larry, but Larry also did like a full fuel run for Roy, but had 11 minutes of repair. But I ended up completing 233 laps. Larry finished 195, Roy finished 180, and Adam finished 204. I had 22 incident points in 6 hours, which I must say, I'm happy with that, considering how many times I remember going through the bloody grass and then looking back and saying I only had 22 incident points. I'm cool with that. And actually gained .46 of a safety rating, which basically recovers what I lost in my IndyCar in my my Milwaukee and my Mid-Ohio races. I didn't talk about my Indy race last week. Mid-Ohio, I said, hey, I have great confidence. I'm looking forward to this race. Ended up being a complete and total disaster. Did horrible and finished the race, but it was not good. I should not have had the confidence I had, apparently, but like I said, I spent all that time basically getting ready for Daytona. As I told my wife, it's like, you know what? If I had a bad IndyCar race, it's bad for me. If I have a bad Daytona race, it's bad for everybody, for my entire team. So I spent way more time making sure I was going to keep the car on the track at Daytona than I did at Mid-Ohio. And my results showed the effort. Like I said, the last thing I want to do is, say, okay, thanks for getting up at, 2:30 in the morning. Here's your car, as I hand him a baggie. The bigger parts are over there in a pile, but here's the little bits I collected, I didn't want that to be the situation. So, but in the end, great race. We ended up 27 laps down to the leader, which over 6 hours, or 24 hours, that's fine, considering some of the problems we had. But had a great time, great team effort by us guys, and finishing in 7th, out of actually how many? Didn't even count how many DPs started our race, but you know what? 42 cars started that race, and we finished in 7th in one piece. So I will take that as Chad counts how many DPs were in there. While I continue to talk. I know there's at least 12.
19.
All right, so 19 cars, and we finished 7th. You know what? 24 hours? Dang, I'll take that all day long. But
absolutely.
Great job by Roy and Larry for and Roy, Larry, and Adam. For putting that putting us in that position. And despite some of the problems, you know what? I am extremely happy and proud of the guys for what we did. So that was our race. One race left to go, Chad, and that's yours.
Whew. We're getting there. It's an endurance show.
Well, we warned you. We knew that it was going to be an endurance show because you know what? We've got a lot to talk about. In 24 hours, a lot happens, man.
I will say one thing before I get into my race about your race. I enjoyed reading the chat message that LOS3979 just posted saying that the Larry stint was hilarious because he enjoyed when, and he kind of quotes Larry here, Trevor, I need you to drive because of the flooding. And then he says your face was hilarious. So now I want to go back and look at your face and see what you made.
I'll have to go back and look at the stream. I will post that, although I'll probably break it up into chunks rather than saying, "Hey, here's a 24-hour YouTube video. Enjoy."
Have fun. So, IR Team 2. Whew. Okay, so our race was a lot of cool stuff happened to this race. We had 23 GT cars and 19 DPs, so very similar to Trevor's room, if not exactly the same as Trevor's room. We ended up rolling off on the grid in seventh place out of all of the 42 cars, I believe, that were in the field. And Dean started the race for us, and largely, I guess, well, first of all, it was Dean, myself, and Tim and Corey that were on the team. And I want to say this before I get into the story of the race. When about 3 weeks ago, I guess it is now at the time that we're recording the show, when all this kind of started coming together and the teams were kind of being formed and everything, and I kind of looked at that group, they got put together. I will be 100% honest with you. I looked at that team and I said to myself, and I may have even said it to Trevor, I was like, that's a good team. Like, that's a team that, in my opinion, if they didn't have any problems, could win the race. So, flash forward to the race, so to speak. And like I said, Dean started seventh. He's rolling off. And I watched the first few laps, and he took it easy. He wasn't being very aggressive, which I think he ended up getting hard on himself for. But honestly, at that point, it was quite fine. There was no reason to really be pushing it that early. And he lost a couple of spots. We went back to about ninth. And then he slowly but surely, and even eventually, really started catching up. And we started making up some spots. So he got us up into the top five at one point. Now, at some point, and I'm not exactly sure when it happened, because I was not watching at this point. I was trying to save some data for my situation right now with how I'm going on, or with the way my internet is.
Living like a Neanderthal without actual internet is what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure. I felt like I was going to have more than enough, but I wanted to make sure. So I didn't watch most of Dean's stream, kind of stayed away. I did check Twitter. I would check each stream, not just Dean's, but each stream, just to check on how things were going. So I don't know exactly when this happened, but Dean was being pretty conservative. He was trying to preserve the car, and there was one minor incident that happened with a GT car, and I believe it was the first time through GT traffic. He was following two Daytona prototypes, and he had a GT car on the inside, and he assumed that, or at least Dean says that he assumes that the GT car did not see him because the GT car kind of cut to the apex while Dean was there.
As if he was not there. It's like, well, there's my apex. Nothing wrong with that.
So Dean kind of got doored in that situation. And at first, I think Dean was kind of worried about it because I guess it was a pretty hard hit. And Corey, later, I was talking to Corey about it, and Corey seemed to think it was a very vicious hit, too. So we were kind of, I guess, lucky that we actually only had 5 seconds of repairs for that little incident, which we didn't get the paintball flag, obviously. Everything was good. And when Dean came down pit road, he pitted, and we took care of the damage and lived happily ever after, so to speak. And Dean went back out, and as I said, at the beginning, he was trying to preserve the car and kind of taking care of it. But then he really got kind of, well, at least from what I saw, he really seemed to settle into a good groove, and he really made up time. Like I said, he started seventh, went back to ninth. He really started getting us up there. We got in the top five, then we really started gaining. I think a couple of cars wrecked even, but I think for the most part, he was just beating some of these people outright. And he ended up anyways, getting up into second place and stayed there for pretty much the rest of his stint, with the exception of when the leader, who had checked out at this point, they were about 35 seconds ahead or so, they had started pitting about 2 or 3 laps before, or maybe 3 or 4 laps before we were. So they would pit, and then Dean would, lead for 2, 3, 4 laps, something like that, and then we would switch back, and everything would kind of return to normal, so to speak. So so Dean got to lead, in that little bit, of time. Obviously it was only for a few laps before we pit, but it was still cool. And so about 3 hours into the race, I came down for my first stint, or well, actually, I say came down. I went up because my sim rig is upstairs. So I sat down and I spotted for the last little bit of Dean's stint and kind of helped him out, and he kind of informed me, about some things that had happened and the way the car was driving, and it was driving really well. He had not made any changes to the in-car settings. We were running the defaults for the setup that we had that Danny had made, and Roy had tweaked after that. And
yeah, I was going to say, and thinking of that, that was one mistake I made with ours. Is I never learned how to adjust the car. So I didn't. When it came down to it, I had no idea what to do with the thing. So I know that they had changed the traction control. I think is the only thing they changed. But it was like, whatever you're giving me, I guess that's okay because I have no button set up. Like I remember when we did the last year's, like I had some settings and stuff that we changed, and I learned what they did and how the car reacted. This time, nope, I didn't have a clue, and I realized that as we, getting in the car, it's like, wait, I've missed something in my preparation.
yes. So Dean had not changed them at all, and I jumped in the car, and the first, couple laps, I was kind of filling the car out, I was getting the heat in the tires, and I wouldn't go spinning off into the turn. I did not pull a Trevor and spin 2 turns into my stint. I I went out and did quite well. I took it easy, on purpose, and then I settled in. And here's the thing that I kind of did with my stint. I found myself being a little bit different, I guess, than I've been in past endurance events. And I found myself being way more smart about what I was doing. In the past, I've been smart, but I've been more focused on trying to, keep my speed up and trying to catch cars, and that's worked. But in this race, for some reason, I felt like I needed to be more patient and more smart. I don't know why, but I just had that feeling. And so anytime I would catch GT cars, I would stay right behind them. I mean, I was all over their back bumper, but I was being patient with them, and I was not trying to dive it off into the next turn so I could, do something like what Trevor was doing and completely miss the bus stop. I was being very patient and picked my spots of where I wanted to get around them, and they all seemed to pick up on that. And we were in the fourth split, so pretty much everybody in the room was really good, and I thought we had a very clean race, all throughout. I mean, there were definitely some wrecks, but it seemed very clean, and people, I think, did well on, kind of getting out of your way if they were going to give you the spot, or, and different things like that. There were a few instances where that didn't work out too well, but for the most part, I thought it was pretty clean. And so my very first fuel run, that was basically what I did. I just was smart. I was still, I was in second, I was doing my thing, basically, but I was slower lap time wise than I had been in all my practicing. My practicing, I was running 139s like every lap, somewhere in there. And then in the race, I had only hit like 139, and I was stuck in the 40s, now the low 40s. And I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, man, what's wrong with me? I gotta get a little more speed out here, because Dean was running 39s, and
As to say, stuck in the 40s. My best lap over 6 hours was a 41.7. Just putting that out there. Mister Stuck in the 40s.
Hey, what can I say?
I would have paid money to get to the 40s, man.
Well, I'll take it. I'll take it. I mean, I'll take your money. So, anyways, Mr. Stuck in the 40s here. I was trying to figure out, how I could get a little bit quicker. But now part of the problem why I was having problem with getting my speed going and getting my rhythm going, and it was really the problem, I was in some very heavy traffic. I felt like, I mean, like Trevor said, the first couple of hours, everything's like really on top of each other, but then it kind of spreads out and you still have your chunks of traffic, here, there, and everywhere. Actually, I remember one time watching a Dean stream. I was not racing, but I was watching. This is a side note. I remember looking at the little track map that he had like Trevor did, up on the stream. And I swear, like every car was like on the side from turn one to like turn two of the Daytona, the NASCAR part. Like they were all right there, and there were like three cars everywhere else.
I know, I know, like watching mine as well. Like when I was watching our guys' stream, like after all this time, why are they all just? I mean, obviously there's draft involved with pulling the cars together, but like the number of times when there was like half the track was just empty. It's like, how does this happen? Like you guys should just be this many cars in this much time. You guys should just be everywhere, but nope. Anyway,
Yes. So, but that was a side note. So I was in some fairly heavy traffic, and that's part of why I found myself being smart and why I wasn't getting the best lap times. I pitted and came back out, and my Corey at this point had started watching, and he was next up to drive, but he still had a long ways before he was going to race. And my lap time, I was in not as much traffic this time, and my lap times improved. I got back into the 39s. I started really running some good laps, and at this point, the leader of the race, who was up by about 35 or so seconds on Dean, and they increased their lead a little bit when I got in the car because they had a really good driver in their car. I think he was like a 3,400 iRating driver, maybe, which is like 2,000 more than me on the roadside. And he'd pulled a little bit of a gap on me since I had gotten in the car, but they switched drivers. And then they had a much slower driver in the car. I don't mean to be mean, but with the stats I'm about to tell you, you're going to realize that he was much slower than the person they had in. And the lead when they made the change, I think was like 52 seconds on me. By the end of this fuel run, it was down to 15 seconds. And I had not really been driving all that much. It wasn't like I was having a superstar fuel run. I was hitting good lap times, but it wasn't that good. And I think they did have one issue where they had a quick spin, but for the most part, they stayed pretty clean. And so and the third place car was only a few seconds behind me, so we were catching them, and we were like, okay, we're catching the leader now, legitimately. Before it was just Dean switching, off on pit stops and stuff. And so that run, was really good, not much traffic, and I felt good about it. Got into the pits and came back out for another fuel run. And I'm not sure what happened, but something happened to the leader. I don't know if they had a black flag or if they had a small spin again, but they lost a lot of time on this pit stop. And it went from I think I got it all the way down to 13 seconds before the pit stop. And when I came out, they were like 7 seconds behind me. So something happened to them. But they didn't have any damage. Their car was still fine, but something happened. I'm not sure what. Well, I came out then as the race leader, and the guy that had been in third but was now in second was pretty much right on my rear end. It took him a couple laps to catch me. He was about 3 seconds back, and he eventually caught me. He was a really fast driver. He was about a 34, 32 or something like that, 100 iRating, and for the record, I'm 1,800 on the road, and I'm doing pretty good. My iRating may not be 100% realistic, but it's still, I'm racing with some really good people here. We're in the fourth split. He caught me, and he was in the 8 car. So from now on, I'm going to refer to him as in the 8 car. And he and I in this particular fuel run, and this is like 18, 19 hours left in the race, had like the best race for the race lead that I think I've ever been a part of.
Mm-hmm.
He caught me and then he passed me. I stayed right behind him. I passed him, then he passed me right back. Then I passed him, then he passed me back. I stayed behind him for a while on purpose. And then, like, we were following each other all over the racetrack. Like, I was in his tire track. Literally, once he caught me, I don't think more than like 5 car lengths was ever between us. And we stayed, and part of it was because of the draft. You know, we'd catch right back up to each other. But we stayed right there the whole fuel run, trading the lead, running right on each other. Like he was on my bumper, I'd be right on his bumper. It was fun. And I don't know what it was like to watch, but from my seat, you know, driving, I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And
I was watching the stream at that point in time as well, and it looked amazing. Like you guys were just putting on a show. Like it was great to watch. Like the whole thing just back and forth, and back and forth. It was a lot of fun. Like I was sitting there looking at it. It's like, okay, either because you couldn't get away from him, obviously, because you could pass him and then he pass you back and stuff. I was sitting there thinking, it's like, well, either Chad is like super frustrated that he can't get away from this guy, or he's having the best time of his life. I don't know which one it is, but one of those two things is happening right now.
yep, it was the fun one. I was having fun because I knew he was much faster than me, and so I thought he would lead me, you know, run off and lead me, you know, when he caught me. But the fact that we ended up having that good of a race for 27 laps or 25 laps maybe was awesome. Like I really enjoyed that. And then we pitted, and I think they had something a little mishap on their pit stop because they fell back quite a ways actually. So I ended up being in the lead all alone for my final fuel stint of that first stint. And it was an okay last fuel run. I mean, nothing really special happened. I was kind of all by myself, to be honest, for most of that. It was almost kind of boring compared to what the last fuel run had been with running for the lead like that. So just leading the race, and then eventually came in and turned it over to Corey. And to this point, the only damage that we had ever had was the 5 seconds where Dean got doored very early on in the race, and we obviously fixed that. One thing I will mention that I forgot to say, at the very end of my first stint, I had had a couple of 1Xs where it cut the bus stop, you know, just by accident. Not trying to cut it by any means, but just accidentally got a little off the road there and picked up a few 1Xs. But I did at the very end of my stint with like 2 or 3 laps to go into the same turn that Trevor had a problem with, where he wrecked that one that kind of swings to the right before you do the left-hander to get back on the NASCAR part. I went into the turn. I just passed somebody. It might have been a Daytona prototype, and I remember being happy that I'd passed them because I had struggled getting around them, and they'd kind of been staying around me. And I was that person I was getting frustrated with that was staying with me, for the record. And I went into that turn, and I did not do anything differently, to my knowledge. But I guess I didn't slow down the car enough, even though I thought I had. But apparently I didn't, because I kind of went into turn, and I went, oh dear, you know, I'm a little kind of overshooting the turn here a little bit. So I hit the brakes a little more. That kind of got me a little sideways. And but I wasn't like spinning. I was just a little out of control. And I kind of thought, well, I'm going to go in the grass for sure, because the grass was coming up. And I was like, okay, I'm in the grass. And then eventually I got there, and I was sliding through the grass, and I thought, well, I've had experience driving in the grass. I think I can make the car turn because I'd slowed down enough that I should be okay. Well, that wasn't the case because I just kept sliding right to the wall. And
I should be okay. No.
whee! It was like I hit ice or something. And so as soon as I recognized that, I just locked the brakes down. And thank God I did, because that actually kept me, like I stopped like right at the wall. Like I didn't hit the wall. I stopped at it. And threw it in reverse real quick and got right back going. And Corey did a great job of, you know, saying, track's clear, come on back out. And that was great because I couldn't see anything. I wasn't looking at my right monitor, the mirrors, or nothing. I was just trying to get back on the track, driving through the grass. And he was like, everything's clear. So I got back on. That cost us a little bit of time, not much, but I didn't didn't hurt the car at all, no damage, nothing. And then I gave it to Corey. And for just about all of Corey's first stint, if not all of it, but I don't know that he was there for the whole time. I think towards the end he got replaced, but he was in first place where I left it. But I think towards the end we lost first, if I'm not mistaken. I think we went back to second. And then Tim got in the car after that, and I think we were kind of back and forth with first and second at this point. I think Tim led a few laps. And then Tim had a spin. He didn't hit anything, but he couldn't really merge back onto the racetrack because there was a lot of traffic, and so he couldn't pull out in front of everybody. So he had to wait. That cost us a lot of time. We ended up officially losing the lead, and at this point, the leaders the leader of the race rather put in some really good drivers, up there in their iRating range, and they started going to work on those lap times. And for I think at some point in Tim's stint, the first place car, who was the 83 car who he'd been racing earlier, and then the 8 car who I had raced, those two teams put in some really good drivers. They went back to first and second. Tim fell to third and stayed there. And those two lead cars were so fast, especially the 83, that when I got into the car after Tim and had finished his stint, and with no damage or nothing like that, and was in third, we actually ended up, when I got in the car, we were very close to losing a lap. And then during my stint, we lost a lap and almost and technically lost 2 laps. Towards the end of my stint, we actually went 2 laps down. Now, it was not by much because they had just passed me, and I could still see the leader. They were only 3 or 4 seconds ahead of me. And my second stint was really kind of boring. There was really nothing that happened to speak of. And I gave the car in third place basically a lap down. It was once they pitted, we got the lap back, but we had just gone 2 laps down. And they put in another driver who I don't think was quite as fast. So we ended up staying a lap down. Corey got back in and did his stint. And this is with 8 hours to go is when Corey got in. And this is where the race started changing quite dramatically. Corey was running really well, and we were in third. The 8 car who I had been racing with for the lead, at some point during Corey's stint, it may have been towards the end or halfway through, I can't remember, the 8 car got into a wreck with somebody. I don't know what, I didn't see it, don't know what happened, but they got in a wreck. Now, it did not destroy the race car, but it did cost them a ton of time, and they had to do a bunch of repairs. And so they ended up being about 4 laps down. So obviously Corey moved back into second. At this point, the leader of the race, the 83 car, had changed drivers again, and they had a slower driver back in. So Corey unlapped himself and started catching the leader, all in one swift motion. And then the time came for Dean to get in the car. So Dean jumped in the car for what was supposed to be his final stint. So at this point, we are really catching. I think Corey had gotten it down to somewhere between 18 and 20 seconds to the leader. We had made up a lot of time. So we were a lap down, and then all of a sudden, we're 18, 20 seconds behind the leaders. And Dean takes over and continues, to catch up, and we're gaining on the leaders and all that stuff. And then I think at some point, trying to remember exactly what happened at this point, but I think at some point we might have taken the lead again, and it might have been, or it was really close, is what it might have been. And I can't remember, but it was towards the end of Dean's stint, but he still had another fuel run to go, or he may have even had 2 more fuel runs to go. Something happened in Dean's house that was very loud and was upstairs,
Hmm.
and he has children. And it was like 2 a.m. in the morning, or 3 a.m. in the morning, whatever it was, 4 a.m. in the morning. And so he actually, in that moment, Tim had signed on and was gearing up for his final stint. He was supposed to finish the race for us. Corey was still there. And Dean, oh man, it was like 3 laps before he pitted. He was like, something's going on, and I'm kind of nervous. This was like father taking over here. It's like, I'm really nervous about what's going on here because it's like 4 in the morning. Nothing's supposed to be happening. Everybody's supposed to be asleep. Why is there a bunch of racket?
Hmm.
And so he ran his last couple of laps, pitted, and Tim was going to go ahead and jump in the car and do a stint for Dean, and then Dean would come back in the next stint. So we were kind of doing the same thing that you guys did with
Right.
Larry at the beginning of the race, but ours was at the end of the race. Well, I mean, like literally seconds before Dean got into the pit stall, and Tim was going to take over. Tim jumps on team speak and is like, my steering wheel is not responding."
Oh.
And it was like, and then Corey, who was still there, and hanging out, watching, and kind of spotting crew chiefing or whatever. He's like, "I can jump in. I'm ready. I can jump in." So like literally, bang bang, from Tim to Dean's supposed to be driving to now suddenly Tim's driving to, "Oh, I can't do that because my steering wheel's not working," to Corey jumping into the car, all at random. Dean comes back a little bit later. Everything's fine. I jumped into the server not too long after this because I'd tried to go to sleep, and I did sleep for about 2.5 hours, but that was about it. Came back, and I was literally surprised to see Corey in the car because Dean's supposed to be in the car, and it's supposed to be getting ready to be Tim in the car. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And I kind of looked through some of the tweets, and I kind of knew what was going on with our car. I was not surprised that we were in second because I really felt like we had run well enough to put ourselves in position that something might happen to one of those teams, and we might, creep up there.
Hmm.
But so I wasn't surprised about that, but I was surprised about Corey. Corey ran that fuel run for Dean, and then we started looking at things because at this point we were really catching the leaders. We were really close to them at this point. And it looked like we had a shot at winning the race. This was probably about 3.5 hours to go or somewhere in there. And so we decided that Corey would stay in for another fuel run after the one he was doing because Corey had been running really good. Like this was probably the two best stints Corey had put in for the whole race, and they were at random.
Hmm.
And he was really setting some good pace and catching the leader. And I may have gotten this wrong. This is actually the point where I think we've gotten down to about 18 seconds. It's hard for me to follow all this because I was asleep for some of it. And a lot happened while I was asleep.
Because I wasn't there, because I was
Yeah.
in bed, so.
So I'm trying to remember it all correctly. So forgive me if I'm incorrect on some of it. But so basically, regardless, we were catching them, and Corey was catching them at this point. And so we kind of took a team vote because Tim was supposed to get in the car. And so we voted on Corey running another fuel stint, which was really supposed to be Dean's. And then we were kind of looking at it and we were like, "Oh, we might actually have a shot at winning this race." And so we started thinking, okay, who's our fastest driver? Which was kind of obvious. And the fact that it was Dean, I mean, all four of us were fast. Like Tim and I considered ourselves the slower drivers on the team, but even still, we were doing pretty good. Like my fastest lap time was a 1:39.09, and Tim's fastest lap time was a 1:39.07. Corey's fastest lap time was a 1:38.97, and Dean's, which I think he may have had some draft, but I'm not sure, but he ran a 1:38.50. So, but Corey was saying, while he was driving, he was like, well, when Dean was just in, a while ago, he was running 3 or 4 tenths quicker a lap than me. And there's one thing that I know about Dean that I've learned in racing with him is that he's really good at really rubbered up tracks. And obviously, we've been running for 24 hours almost. The track is super rubbered up.
Yep.
Tim and I aren't as good at that yet. We've still got to learn how to attack and get better at it. And like during my second stint, I had learned that you could drive it in much deeper, and I think that helped Corey, maybe even helped Dean. just discovering that, and kind of being like, ooh, so if you drive it in much deeper, there's actually still grip and your lap times improve. Because I noticed that during my stint, because I was kind of slow and then picked it up once I started driving in a little deeper. But I can't do that yet. I haven't got that in my system. And Tim was like, I don't need to be in the car, if we're going to go for the win here. And so Tim, unselfishly was like, hey, somebody else take this over. And me and him were both kind of pushing for Dean. And Corey agreed and was like, yeah, I think Dean, he was 3 or 4 tenths faster than me. I think Dean needs to finish it out. So Corey ran 2 fuel stints.
Oh, has Dean returned at this point in time from the poltergeist that have taken over his house?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Like you weren't just saying, well, I think we need to put Dean in his car, and meanwhile, Dean's not even there. Yeah.
Yeah, he returned pretty quickly.
Okay.
And watched most of both of Corey's fuel stints. So Corey was, or that rather, Dean was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'll jump in. So he jumps in, and eventually, through Dean's stint, we ended up, getting real close to the leaders and overtaking them. And they had a driver who was fast, but not like overly fast. And one of their drivers who had been like really fast was in the server. And so we were thinking, okay, they're going to see that, we're catching them. And, if they're trying to win the race, which obviously you would think they would be, then they're probably going to put that guy in. And that guy and Dean, I think that guy probably had Dean beat by a little bit, maybe not, by a whole lot, but, he was pretty tough. He was a good driver. But he exited the room. And the guy that was in the car, or that finished the race anyways, was good, but not as good as Dean.
Yeah.
And so that kind of put us in a situation where it was like, okay, we've got a real shot here. Well, very similar to the way that the race for the show team went. We knew we were going to be close on fuel, and we were going to have to make a pit stop towards the end of the race. And they were too. So we started planning. Corey did. Corey was kind of doing the math on this, and he was like, I think even at one point he said, we've got like 4 more pit stops, and one of them's going to be like for a splash of fuel. And on that one, we're not going to take tires because it's going to be at the very end of the race, like 4 or 5 laps to go, the way he was doing the math on all of it. And it had gotten to a point where, for the longest time, the leader, the 83 car, was pitting before us. But it had switched to where we were now kind of pitting before them. And they ended up, in the last, I don't know, hour and a half of the race, they ended up having a few issues. Because the pressure started getting to them, as I say. Because we were on them, and we, eventually, like I said, we got around them. And the pressure really ramped up. Tim and I were actually watching their car versus our car, and you could see the way that they were driving. They were getting kind of squirrely. They were really being aggressive with the car. They were starting to, whereas they kind of been patient with GT traffic, yet aggressive at times. It was just all aggressive now. They were making some not so
Get
cool
out of
moves.
my way.
Yeah. Because you could tell that they knew, hey, we've had the lead here for like, I don't know, 16 hours out of this race, and now suddenly, we got somebody that's like going to take this from us. And they actually ended up getting in a wreck with a GT car. Now, it didn't damage their car that badly. They did pit and do a driver swap at that point and put a slightly better driver in, and that guy came out. And I don't know, it couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 laps in to his little run or something like that. He flat ran somebody over coming out of the bus stop. Like, I mean, it was wrong in my opinion. I mean, I don't think it was intentional, but it was kind of like he was trying to keep his speed up and keep going, and he just totally ran the guy over and wrecked him. I think it was a GT car. And I think that hurt their car a little bit. It hurt their timing a little bit. And so it came down to where they made their pit stop. I don't know if they took tires or not, but they at least had to put in, enough fuel. Their pit stop was made several laps before our pit stop was made. We pitted with 4 laps to go, And when we pitted, we were 35 or 36 seconds ahead of second place, the 83 car, with 4 to go, getting a splash of fuel, no tires, because the tires are hot, so that's going to help,
Hmm.
Dean get up to speed much quicker. And, Dean made a flawless, pit stop. He comes down, we get the fuel, we come back out. And by the time it kind of settled in, he got going again, it was a 5 second lead with basically 3.5 laps to go. And then it was down to a 4 second lead with 3 to go. And then with 2 to go, it was down to a 3 second lead. And then it was coming to the white flag. It was basically the same thing. And so we take the white flag and we come back around, and he ran a great, last 4 laps there. Dean did. And so did the other team. They were coming.
Hmm.
And he comes out of the bus stop and he comes around 3 and 4. And coming off of turn 4 to get the checkered flag, the second place team is 2.5 seconds back. And at that point, they were too far away that unless something really dramatic happened, like Dean lost his internet or power or something,
Hmm.
that we had it locked up. And Dean crossed the start finish line, and we won the 24 hours of Daytona. We ended up winning by 4 seconds because the second place team kind of like gave up, I guess. They just kind of coasted to the line. But it was really 2.5 coming off turn 4. And that's what amazes me about these races. 24 hours.
Yep.
And it came down to the pit strategy that we did and they did, and 2.5 seconds basically. And one turn is all that separated us at the very end of the race. And we freaking won.
Yeah, like you said, after 24 hours, not like there's caution flags that bunch up the
Yeah.
fields. Like this is 24
Yeah.
hours. You guys raced your best
Straight
race.
racing.
They raced their best race, and you're separated by 2.5 seconds at the end. Like that is amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that's just like a normal race, that we do in a league or an official race, but we ran for 24 hours. And putting Dean in the car was the absolute right call. And I'm glad that Tim was willing to do it because Dean was definitely more consistent than any of us would have been. And to put him in the car when we did, and the way we did everything, and in the DP, the pit stop is quicker than the penalty for a driver swap. So we knew we had to make less driver swaps. We had, like I told them at one point, I was like, well, we got to make a decision and then we got to be done with it because, we can't, that cost you 7, 8 seconds, of driver swap time. So you gotta keep it as low as possible. We cannot afford to lose time. So everything we did was like brilliant. And words like cannot express really how well we handled that race from the start to the finish, especially at the finish, the last 3.5 hours. Like all four of us were on TeamSpeak. We were all communicating, talking about what we think we should do, working on the pitch strategy, watching, our closest competitors, kind of reporting what they're doing, made this vote, to who we should have to, win the race and try to win the race anyways. And everything we did just worked out brilliantly. And two cool things that I will mention, and then we'll wrap this up, is number one, not only did we win the race, the 5 seconds of damage that Dean got earlier in the race, that was all we had. We didn't have any more damage, except for the one time where he got doored like an hour into the race,
That's
which
amazing.
I think is incredible.
Yeah.
I almost think that's more incredible than winning. And the last thing that I will say is that as soon as Dean won, all four of us said something like, yay, we won, or great job, guys, or something like that. And then it was just silence. Nobody said anything. Like, I'm not kidding. Go watch Dean's stream. Like, it was silent. Dean even came on at one point after he had driven around the track to come around to do the burnout, and he was like, wow, it's a lot quieter in here than I thought it would be. Because Corey even said, he was like, dude, I'm in total shock that we just won. And the way we won, like, that was dramatic. Those last 4 hours were very dramatic for us. Not so much for, like, wrecks or, smoke and all that. Like, it was just, we were a lap down, almost two, and won.
Well, and and a key thing there as well. Like I think the key turning point there is the fact you won by 4 seconds, 2.5 seconds, whatever you want to call it. But the fact that when you had that moment when Dean pulled into the pits, you guys had to change drivers, and all of a sudden Tim had the problem, and Corey jumped in, like that right there. Like if that had taken you 10 seconds, 15 seconds to figure out, like there's your race. You know what I mean? Like that's it was like that pressure all of a sudden, boom, you guys need to react now, and you did, and you won the race. Like it was moments like that kind of built up, putting you guys in the position to win that race. So I mean, that was like, you want to talk about team effort, like that was a team effort that won that race, like big time.
Oh
So
yeah. And that's why I said, like 3 weeks ago when I looked at that team, I was like, man, that's a team right there. And Corey is actually the person who tweeted this during the race. For those of you that missed it on our team Twitter, but in just the Power Series alone, and obviously we all raced different things, but in just the Power Series, between me and Tim and Corey and Dean, we've combined for 64 wins in the Power Series and 6 championships. And when Corey posted that and I read that, I even like quoted the tweet from my own personal Twitter and was like, hence why they're all on the same team. Because like I really that like those 4 guys, and I mean I'm including myself, but those 3 guys are good guys that know how to drive, but that are very smart about it too. Like they're not just, oh, they're super fast, but they do dumb things sometimes. Like they're pretty darn smart drivers, and that's why they've won a lot of races. And like you said, the teamwork with all 4 of us, we're friends. We've all raced each other before. We know how each other raced each other, and we know how each other races, when we're on the same team. And that was the first time Corey had ever been, with us. But, he's still a friend of ours. And the cool thing about it is that at Spa, Dean had wrecked at Spa while we were second and catching the leaders. And that kind of started the end of our race, very early on, because we never recovered after that. And Corey was on his team at Spa, and their team was actually leading the race, and he was driving the car and made a mistake and wrecked, and their team never recovered from that. So the fact that Corey got thrown in when Tim's steering wheel didn't work and started making up a bunch of time on the leader, and then Dean got in the car and finished it off, I think is just way cool for them, because they had come off 2 very bad races at Spa to where they'd had crushing defeats, and then won it for our team. So it was the whole thing was awesome. It was way cool, and I can't wait to do it again with those guys, because man, that's a good team right there.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it was, we talked about it. It was, there was a really good group of people, like for all 3 teams that were, like, and all 3 teams faced adversity in some way, shape, or form. And it still amazes me that here we all are, quote unquote internet friends. I mean, we're people that we're asking them to get up at ridiculous hours, or these situations, you need to do this now, and do, like, just for all of us, like the 11 of us, to come together and just make these results happen and work together and jump in when needed and do all these things. Like that just amazes me. Like that's what a great group of guys, that we pulled together for this, for these 3 teams, and having, a results basically 1st, 6th, and 7th. I mean, in 3 different splits. Like that blows me away. Like I'm so proud of this team, and and everything that they did. Like, and I say that, team, like all 3 teams together are just one big giant team, because we all work together, getting ready for the race. Be it, like even people like Danny jumping in, helping with setups. He couldn't even race, and and the setup stuff and the tweaking and the scheduling and setting up the website like you did, and the guys setting up their streams, and just everything that everybody did just together to make this into what ended up being like an amazing 24 hours for all of us is just so totally cool. So proud of the guys.
Absolutely. We completed 847 laps. Dean had 229 of those. Tim had 112. Corey 280. I had 226. We had 74 incident points, 23 for Dean, 5 for Tim, 35 for Corey, and 11 for me, most of which were 1Xs on my end.
5. Like,
Yeah.
5 incident points. Man.
Dean gained .24 safety rating, Tim gained .40, Corey gained a whopping 1, and I didn't gain any because I was already at 499. So
Right.
a good a good race for us and our wow, like you said, the whole team, like it was like we talked about, having the three streams going on our website. Like I watched that a lot too, especially once my stints were done. Like I was just watching it because I was like, I don't care about that anymore, and I really enjoyed watching all three teams, and everybody seemed to be having a blast, and hopefully, they we all have good runs again. Because I mean, obviously, it makes it more fun when you have a good run, but at the same time, it I think it rewards people like a Danny, who even though Danny couldn't be there, he still made the setup, and the fact that the setup that he made was for the DP, got first and sixth or seventh, and it's like that's got to make him feel good, and he wasn't even part of it.
Yep. I
So
mean, he felt it sucks because his work schedule ended up in such a way that a lot of the races end up on weekends that he can't drive, so he's pretty bummed about that. And I mean that's the other side too. Is he was pretty disappointed when the schedule came out because he enjoys the stuff, yet still like he got over that disappointment to help the team instead. Like like that's class act.
yeah,
It's we somehow like, and I don't know how this happened, but somehow years ago I created an idea for a podcast, made that, then on a joke created an idea for a racing team just for because I wanted to write a funny press release, and fast forward and somehow around this idea have collected some just incredible people, and that's just so cool to me that if you just follow the path to how we got to here, it was just amazing. Like
yeah.
some of the best people on iRacing as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah.
So, but man, talk about marathons.
Yeah, I think we should save that last part for next week's show and close it out.
The last part. Oh, right. Yes, absolutely. We did get some people send in some of their experiences from the Daytona 24, and if you wish to do so, please do. We obviously dedicated this week to speaking about a lot about our experiences here because, well, there was 3 teams worth, and we were there. But we did have some listener experiences, which we will share with you next week. So if you have any interesting stories that you want to share with us, let us know in the next week to that feedback email, feedback@iracingtodayradio.com. And, so we can read them next week or discuss them or whatever next week. There's just not enough time in the day, man, for that many 24-hour races. But we will talk about your guys' experiences next week, so make sure if you want us to talk about them or, you just want to say, hey, I had a great race. It was fun. Whatever. Just send them in to our feedback email, and we will discuss them next week for you guys.
Absolutely. So that will about do it for this week. Am I doing that right?
Sure, why not? You do it.
Sure.
You do it the way that you want to do it, man.
Because I'm Trevor now. So thanks to all of you for listening. We really do appreciate it. We're 129 episodes strong right now, which is incredible. 130 next week. Whew. Only 70 more to 200.
Oh no, I got to start prepping now.
I know. So remember that the show is available for download on iTunes under the podcast section, where we would really, really, really appreciate a review. Like seriously, go do it now. Stop everything. To help get the word out about our show so that more people can find it and come hang out with us and race and stuff. Remember that the show is archived on YouTube under Ratface Productions, which is Trevor's channel, and mine there's no at. It's Cadillac is mine. You can check out the website for live shows, archives, information, links, and of course those polls that we mentioned. And next week will be a poll week, so remember to vote before Monday. when the poll closes out. And we will talk about the poll results on next week's show. You can follow us on Twitter at iRacing Today for Trevor and at It's Chadlek for me.
Please email any questions, comments, and poll suggestions that you may have, and of course your Daytona 24-hour race experiences. Send and your sim cockpits, everything we told you. And do this too. Send it, and your bank account information and your send everything. Send that all to feedback at iRacingTodayRadio.com. Feel free to add us as friends on iRacing.com if you haven't done so already. A bunch of you have. More for Chad, I think, but we're not sure. I mean, the jury's still out. I haven't counted. But of course, if you are not a member yet, please refer us in the referral box when you do sign up by entering ratface@gmail.com. And remember, that's 2 T's on Ratface. Just think of the heavy metal band from the 80s, Round and Round. That's 2 T's on Rat for myself, or iRacingLegend@gmail.com for that guy, being Chad. But until next week, ladies and gentlemen, remember that the race is rarely won in the first turn,
but it is often lost there. Good night, everybody.